Welcome, traveller of time and mind, to a quiet sanctuary of the past. Tonight, as the world outside slows its pace, we travel backward through the mists of centuries, settling into the cobblestone streets and flickering hearths of medieval Europe. Close your eyes, let the weight of the day dissolve, and breathe in the stillness of history. When we envision the Middle Ages, our minds often paint pictures of stone castles, armoured knights and kings signing decrees. In the shadows of these grand, male-dominated narratives, history books have often left half of the population in silence, portraying the medieval woman as a passive figure, confined strictly to the domestic hearth, disconnected from the wheels of commerce and wealth. But history, when listened to closely in the quiet of the night, whispers a fundamentally different truth. Tonight, we unearth a long-forgotten world, the secret financial lives of medieval women. Imagine walking through a bustling market in 14th century London, Paris or Cologne. The air is thick with the scent of baked bread, roasting meats, roasted barley and damp earth. If you look closely past the merchants and the guild masters, you will find women at the very centre of the economic heartbeat. They were not merely bystanders, they were property managers, astute traders, international merchants, silent investors and local moneylenders who held the fragile financial threads of their communities together. Our journey tonight does not look at the famous queens or legendary saints, but at the everyday women whose names were inked onto the heavy vellum of court registries, tax rolls, last testaments and merchant ledgers. These dusty archives, preserved across the generations, reveal an intricate web of female economic agency. Women navigated complex legal systems, managed substantial households that operated like small corporations, and asserted their financial independence within a world governed by rigid cultural rules. As the candlelight flickers and the night deepens, we will listen to the echoes of their daily choices. We will discover how a widow could inherit and successfully run a major blacksmith workshop, how a young maiden could invest her dowry in the thriving textile trade, and how wives quietly managed the complex accounts of international merchant houses while their husbands were away at sea for months at a time. The financial landscape of the medieval era was deeply dependent on their labour, their intellect, and their sharp mathematical calculations. Let us step together into this softer, truer history. Let the rhythmic cadence of the past guide you into a deep, peaceful rest as we uncover the quiet strength of the women who built, sustained and financed the medieval world. The channel Sleepy History with Kevin is a storytelling platform created for entertainment, inspiration, education and the promotion of positive emotional value. As the night deepens, let your mind wander into the narrow, winding lanes of a 14th century medieval town. The heavy wooden shutters of the timber-framed houses are closed against the evening chill, and inside the embers of the hearth glow a soft, warm orange. It is within these domestic spaces that the true foundational economy of the medieval world was born, orchestrated largely by the careful hands and sharp minds of women. For a long time, modern eyes viewed the medieval household purely as a space of domestic chores, cooking, cleaning and child-rearing. But in reality, a medieval home was a bustling economic enterprise, a small factory and a corporate headquarters all rolled into one. At the centre of this enterprise stood the mistress of the house. Her responsibilities went far beyond simple maintenance. She was in essence the chief financial officer of the domestic unit. In the agrarian countryside, as well as the rapidly growing urban centres, money was often scarce, and every resource had to be calculated with absolute precision. Women managed the microtransactions that kept the family afloat. They kept mental or physical tallies of debts owed to neighbours, calculated the yield of grain, and determined how much of the household surplus could be taken to the local market to be converted into hard coin. One of the most significant ways women generated independent income was through the production of ale. In the Middle Ages, water was frequently unsafe to drink, making ale a vital daily necessity for every man, woman and child. The brewing of ale was traditionally a domestic craft, entirely dominated by women known as alewives or brewsters. Imagine the immense skill and physical labour required. A brewster had to understand the delicate chemistry of fermentation, manage the supply of precious barley and fuel, and price her product competitively. These women set up small benches outside their doorways, transforming their homes into temporary taverns. The coins gathered from these small-scale transactions belonged to them, providing a crucial financial cushion that protected their families during times of poor harvests or economic downturns. Beyond brewing, the rhythmic hum of the spinning wheel was the constant soundtrack of a woman's day. Textiles were incredibly valuable in the medieval period. A single woolen cloak could cost the equivalent of several weeks' wages for a labourer. Women spun wool, flax, and linen, turning raw fibres into valuable commodities. While some of this cloth was used to clothe the family, a substantial portion was sold to local merchants or traded for essential goods like iron tools, salt, and oil. In the local marketplaces, which opened with the morning light, women were the primary actors. They filled the stalls, trading dairy products, poultry, garden vegetables, and homemade textiles. In these spaces, they learned the art of negotiation, the shifting values of different regional currencies, and the subtle mechanics of supply and demand. They were active participants in a vibrant, localized commercial network, proving that their financial literacy was sharp, practical, and deeply integrated into the survival of their communities. As the stars align over the medieval landscape, we see that these women were not isolated from the financial world. They were its very baseline. Every small coin exchanged over a counter of ale, every yard of spun wool sold to a passing trader, was a testament to their quiet economic power. The ledger of history is full of these small unwritten victories, keeping the wheels of society turning while the world slept. Let the gentle rhythm of our journey carry us further into the heart of the medieval city, where the stone walls of the great guild halls rise above the crowded marketplace. These guilds were the powerful gatekeepers of the medieval economy, regulating trade, setting prices, maintaining quality standards, and controlling who could practice a craft. For centuries, it was assumed that these institutions were exclusive brotherhoods, entirely closed to women. Yet when we dust away the outer layers of official rhetoric and look into the actual membership rolls, a very different picture emerges. In cities across England, France, Germany, and the Low Countries, women were deeply embedded in the guild system. In some urban centres such as Paris and Cologne, there were exclusive all-female guilds dedicated to highly skilled, lucrative trades like silk weaving, gold spinning, and embroidery. These women were master craftspeople in their own right, managing their own workshops, purchasing expensive raw materials from international merchants, and training young female apprentices who would carry the trade into the next generation. The financial independence of these female guild members was legally recognized. They possessed the right to sue and be sued in merchant courts, to enter into binding business contracts, and to manage their own profits independently of their husbands or male relatives. Their delicate, highly precise creations were sought after by royal courts and high-ranking church officials across Europe, flowing through major trade routes and bringing substantial wealth back into the hands of the women who created them. But even within the mixed or predominantly male guilds, such as the bakers, the shoemakers, the tanners, and the blacksmiths, women played an indispensable economic role. The medieval workshop was not a separate corporate office, it was an extension of the family home. Wives worked alongside their husbands, learning the secrets of the trade, managing the payroll for journeymen, and handling the purchasing accounts for raw materials like iron, leather, or grain. When a master craftsman passed away, the stability of the entire enterprise rested upon his widow. Under the customary laws of many medieval cities, a widow had the legal right to inherit her late husband's workshop and continue operating it as a full guild member. This was not a ceremonial title, it was a demanding financial reality. A widow had to maintain the quality of the workshop's output, manage the contracts of current apprentices, negotiate with suppliers, and defend her market share against competitive male rivals. Court records from the era reveal just how fiercely these women protected their economic positions. We find accounts of widows taking rival merchants to court over broken contracts, demanding fair prices for their goods, and successfully petitioning town councils to protect their trade rights. They were astute business managers, balancing the ledger books by candlelight, ensuring that the legacy of their family enterprise survived through times of political uncertainty and economic hardship. As the night air grows cooler and the city sounds fade into a peaceful silence, we can almost hear the soft scratching of a quill on parchment as a female workshop owner calculates her weekly expenses. These women stood firm in a competitive, male-dominated world, utilizing their legal rights and practical intelligence to secure their place in the commercial hierarchy. Their labor was woven into the very fabric of medieval industry, proving that financial acumen knows no gender, even in the distant days of the past. As the night deepens and the silence settles over the ancient rooftops, we turn our gaze toward the heavy oak doors of the medieval courtrooms and the quiet chambers of the town scriveners. Here, written in faded ink upon rolls of animal parchment, lies the legal architecture that governed the financial realities of medieval women. To understand how they held wealth, we must look at the unique legal frameworks they navigated, which changed dramatically depending on their marital status. In the eyes of medieval customary law, a woman's financial freedom was often categorized into two distinct states, femme covert and femme sole. A married woman, or femme covert, had her legal identity largely merged with that of her husband. Yet this did not mean she was completely powerless. In practice, many merchants and town councils recognized a wife's right to act as a femme sole merchant. This specific legal loophole allowed a married woman to engage in trade, rent shops, and incur business debts entirely on her own account, shielding her husband's property from her business liabilities, and granting her a distinct pocket of financial independence. However, the moment a woman became a widow, her legal and financial status shifted profoundly. As a widow, she emerged fully into the light as a femme sole, a legally autonomous individual with the absolute right to control property, execute wills, buy or sell land, and sue debtors in court. In a society where life expectancy was short due to disease and harsh living conditions, widowhood was an incredibly common state, and it turned many ordinary women into major economic players. The primary vehicle for a widow's financial stability was her dower. Before a medieval marriage took place, a formal agreement was drawn up ensuring that a specific portion of the husband's lands and wealth would be set aside for the bride should he precede her in death. Upon his passing, this property came under her direct control. She could lease these lands to tenant farmers, collect rents, sell the timber from the woods, or use the property as collateral to secure financial loans. Through the careful study of medieval wills and testaments, modern historians have discovered how deeply women cared about the preservation and distribution of their personal wealth. In these intimate documents recorded on their deathbeds, women did not just leave behind sentimental items. They meticulously distributed coins, gold rings, valuable silver spoons, expensive bedding, looms and houses to their daughters, sisters and female friends. They created an underground economy of female inheritance, passing down the tools of financial survival from one generation of women to the next. These legal documents show that medieval women were not merely victims of a rigid system, they were tactical operators within it. They understood the power of written contracts, the value of land registries, and the necessity of securing their financial future through legitimate legal channels. They guarded their inheritances fiercely, ensuring that their names, their efforts, and their material achievements would endure long after they closed their eyes for the final time. All stories on this channel, Sleepy History with Kevin, are fictional, thoughtfully crafted around historical themes, and inspired by real events, figures, and periods, reimagined for engaging storytelling. The content does not represent real individuals, actual events, or documented cases. Any resemblance to real people, animals, or events is purely coincidental. Let the gentle warmth of the hearth fire slowly ease your mind as we venture deeper into a lesser-known corner of the medieval economy, the world of credit, small-scale banking, and local money lending. In the 14th and 15th centuries, modern commercial banks did not exist to serve the needs of ordinary townspeople. When a harvest failed, when a roof needed urgent repair, or when a young weaver needed capital to buy raw wool, they did not turn to a financial institution. Instead, they walked down the street and knocked on the door of a local woman. Socioeconomic records reveal that medieval women were highly active participants in the informal credit networks of their communities. Cash was a rare commodity in medieval towns, and the daily movement of goods depended almost entirely on trust and deferred payments. Women of various social standings, from wealthy widows to established marketplace vendors, acted as vital lines of credit for their neighbours, operating like microfinanciers who kept the local economy liquid. When we look into the surviving records of manor courts and urban debt registries, we find hundreds of entries showing women advancing small and mid-sized loans to both men and women. These loans were often secured against collateral, a system where the borrower would leave a valuable item with the female lender as a guarantee of repayment. A silver brooch, a brass cooking pot, a fine woolen cloak, or even a set of ironmongery tools would be carefully inventoried by the woman, held in her storage chests, and returned only when the principal sum, plus a mutually agreed upon fee, was paid back. This role required an immense amount of social intelligence, analytical calculation, and risk assessment. A female lender had to accurately judge the character of her fellow townsfolk, evaluate the true resale value of the items left in her care, and keep meticulous mental or written records of who owed what, and when the payment was due. Through these quiet daily transactions, women exerted a profound level of social and economic influence over their neighbourhoods, acting as the invisible safety nets that prevented families from falling into absolute poverty. Before we follow these threads of history further into the quiet night, take a gentle moment to support our journey through time. If you find comfort in these whispered memories of the past, please take a brief moment to like this video, subscribe to Sleepy History with Kevin, and share your thoughts in the comments section below. Your quiet support helps keep our historical sanctuary alive, allowing us to bring peace and knowledge to weary minds all around the world. For wealthier women, the scale of financial investment was even greater. In major maritime trading hubs like Venice, Genoa, and London, women invested their capital into international trading ventures. They would provide funds to young merchants travelling overseas, entering into contracts where they shared a percentage of the profits if the merchant returned safely with foreign spices, silks, or wines. They sat at their writing desks, carefully weighing risks against potential returns, making calculated decisions that connected their quiet rooms to the vast expanding trade networks of the globalizing world. As the night wraps its velvet mantle around the world, we leave these quiet financiers at their ledgers. The money they lent and the investments they made were the silent fuel that powered the daily machinery of medieval life, proving that the roots of modern finance were cultivated in no small part by the careful, deliberate strategies of women who knew how to make every single coin count. As the imaginary candlelight flickers softly, let us leave behind the stone walls of the medieval city and step out into the vast rolling landscapes of the countryside. The night here is deep, illuminated only by the silver glow of the moon resting over vast wheat fields and quiet thatched roof villages. While urban women navigated guilds and contracts, the vast majority of medieval women lived in these rural areas where their financial lives were bound directly to the earth, the seasons, and the complex structures of manorial law. In the rural feudal system, a peasant household survived on a delicate balance of heavy agricultural labour and resourceful domestic management. Here, the economic contribution of women was not just supportive, it was entirely foundational. While men were often tasked with the heavy ploughing of the outer fields and clearing dense timber, Women held absolute domain over the intensive economy of the farmyard, a specialized domain that generated the family's most reliable day-to-day financial resources. This farmyard economy was centered heavily on what historians call the dairy and poultry sector. Women managed the livestock, milked the cows, and possessed the highly specialized knowledge required to transform perishable milk into long-lasting, valuable commodities like butter and hard cheeses. These dairy products were not just consumed by the family, they were high-demand trade goods. A peasant woman would pack her cheeses and jars of salted butter into wicker baskets and travel to the nearest market town, converting her physical labor directly into silver pennies. The management of poultry was another exclusive economic realm for rural women. Eggs and poultry meat were highly liquid assets in the medieval countryside. They were used like currency to purchase essential household goods that the farm could not produce, such as iron needles, salt for preserving meat, or ceramic cooking vessels. Furthermore, under the strict rules of the feudal manor, tenants were required to pay regular taxes and dues to the local lord. Quite often these obligations were paid not in coin, but in the very products of the woman's labour, a specific number of winter eggs, fat capons or cheeses at Michaelmas. By managing these yields, rural women were directly handling the family's tax liabilities, ensuring that their household remained in good standing with the manorial court. They also possessed an intimate understanding of the natural marketplace, knowing exactly when to sell their livestock for the highest price and how to hoard grain during times of abundance so it could be sold at a premium during the lean months of early spring. The court rolls of rural manors paint a vivid picture of these resilient country women protecting their economic interests. We find endless records of peasant women participating in land transfers, inheriting small plots of agricultural land from their fathers or husbands, and paying fines to the lord to secure the rights to farm those lands independently. They defended their boundaries against encroaching neighbours, sued those who failed to pay for milk or wool deliveries, and actively navigated the complex legal customs of the rural landscape. As the gentle night wind rustles through the fields, we honour the quiet, unceasing labour of these rural women. Their financial world was measured not in massive ledger books, but in the steady accumulation of silver coins, the successful aging of cheese, and the careful preservation of land. They were the true beating heart of the medieval agrarian economy, turning the raw bounty of nature into the steady financial stability that sustained generations. Let the soothing silence of the night transport us now away from the bustling farmyards and market stalls, guiding us toward the high stone walls of a medieval convent. Here, behind heavy wooden gates adorned with carved symbols of devotion, lies one of the most structurally powerful and financially independent spaces available to women in the entire medieval world. To modern eyes, a nunnery is viewed purely as a place of quiet prayer, isolation and spiritual devotion, but in the economic landscape of the Middle Ages, these sanctuaries operated as massive, highly sophisticated corporate enterprises entirely owned and managed by women. At the head of these powerful institutions stood the abbess. An abbess was not merely a spiritual guide, she was a high-ranking feudal lord, a corporate chief executive, and a major landowner all at once. Wealthy noble families across Europe frequently bestowed vast tracts of land, forests, mills, and even entire villages upon these convents, along with substantial financial endowments in gold and silver, to secure a prestigious place for their daughters or to ensure the spiritual salvation of their lineages. With these massive inheritances came immense financial responsibility. The abbess, assisted by her trusted cellarer and treasurer who were also women, managed thousands of acres of agricultural property. They oversaw tenant farmers, calculated agricultural yields, negotiated lease agreements, and collected rents and tithes from the populations living on their lands. They maintained their own internal accounting systems, balancing detailed ledger books that tracked everything from the sale of thousands of pounds of raw sheep's wool to the purchase of expensive imported building materials needed to repair the abbey's stone towers. In some regions, particularly in England and Germany, certain powerful abbesses possessed the legal right to mint their own coins, hold their own regional trade fairs, and operate private courtrooms to settle financial disputes among their tenants. This level of institutional authority gave them a profound degree of economic leverage, allowing them to participate in high-level commerce completely independent of male interference or control by local secular authorities. Within the quiet cloisters of the convent, ordinary nuns contributed to this thriving institutional economy through specialized high-value labor. Convents were major centers for the production of luxury textiles and illuminated manuscripts. Nuns spent hours under the gentle light of stained glass windows, spinning thread made of pure gold, embroidering priceless silk vestments for bishops and kings, and meticulously copying sacred texts onto fine vellum sheets. These exquisite, highly specialized creations were not merely spiritual offerings. They were luxury trade goods commanding immense financial sums across the international markets of Europe. Furthermore, convents functioned as early financial safe havens. Wealthy secular widows or unmarried noble women would often purchase a corrodi, a form of medieval retirement annuity, from a well-run nunnery. In exchange for a large upfront payment of land or cash, the convent guaranteed these women a safe, comfortable room, regular meals, clothing, and security for the rest of their natural lives. It was a mutually beneficial financial contract, providing the convent with immediate investment capital while offering independent women a dignified, secure lifestyle away from the volatile demands of secular society. As the moon casts its pale, tranquil light across the silent stone cloisters, we see that the medieval convent was a remarkable testament to female managerial capability. In an era where individual women faced numerous legal and cultural constraints, these collective communities of women built enduring financial empires. They preserved wealth, stimulated regional trade, and managed massive estates with a level of administrative skill that commanded absolute respect across the medieval world, leaving behind a legacy of quiet, organized prosperity that echoed through the centuries. As the deep stillness of the night wraps tighter around us, let your imagination drift down the grand rivers of Europe, leading to the bustling saltwater ports of Venice, Genoa, Bruges, and London. Here, where massive wooden merchant galleons rock gently against the stone piers, the scale of the medieval economy expands into the international realm. In these high-stakes ports, we discover an elite class of women who transcended local marketplaces to become international merchant traders, commanding global supply chains and navigating the volatile waters of overseas commerce. While common history often paints international trade as an exclusively male adventure, maritime and mercantile records offer a much richer truth. Wealthy merchant widows and independent noblewomen frequently stepped into the shoes of global traders. They did not just sit passively at home waiting for cargo to arrive. They were active investors, shipping magnates, and strategic decision-makers who understood the complex machinery of import and export tariffs, maritime insurance, and currency conversion across different kingdoms. Imagine a woman sitting in a candlelit office overlooking the Thames or the canals of Venice before her lie foreign trade dispatches written on delicate paper. She is calculating the potential profit margins of importing fine French wines, Baltic timber, or rare Mediterranean spices. These women owned shares in merchant vessels, hired ship captains, directed trade expeditions to distant ports, and forged powerful commercial alliances with foreign merchant houses, ensuring that their families' mercantile empires expanded across borders. They were also masters of risk management. International trade in the 14th and 15th centuries was fraught with danger, from unpredictable ocean storms to shifting political alliances that could instantly halt trade routes. To protect their capital, these female merchants diversified their investments. They spread their wealth across multiple ships, invested in urban real estate, and purchased high-yield government bonds, displaying a sophisticated understanding of financial resilience that matches the strategies of modern institutional investors. Before we delve deeper into the extraordinary accounts of these international trade networks, let us pause for a soft moment of appreciation. If you find peace and fascination in these quiet echoes of history, please consider hitting the like button, subscribing to Sleepy History with Kevin, and leaving a gentle comment below. Your wonderful support is what allows this channel to continue crafting these educational and relaxing journeys into the past, providing a peaceful haven for your mind every single night. The legal system of major commercial hubs often bent to accommodate the economic power of these merchant women. In London, the city records show that female merchants were granted special privileges to trade in luxury goods like silk and velvet, materials that required immense capital up front. They managed their own warehouses, employed large staffs of clerks and labourers, and defended their commercial rights before the royal customs officials with absolute confidence and legal precision. As the gentle wash of the tide echoes through the dark port, we visualize these visionary women closing their heavy ledger books for the evening. Their financial ambitions helped connect isolated kingdoms into a vibrant, interdependent global market. They proved that with sharp intellect, calculated risk, and unwavering determination, women could command the great currents of international wealth, quietly shaping the economic destiny of the medieval world while the rest of society lay fast asleep. As the moonlight flows softly through the window, let us look into another hidden corridor of the medieval economy, the professional services and specialized healthcare managed by women. In the expanding cities of medieval Europe, wealth was generated not only through the manufacturing of physical goods or the trading of materials, but also through the vital exchange of specialized knowledge, practical expertise, and essential services that kept urban populations alive and functional. At the apex of this professional world stood the women dedicated to healing and medicine, while universities increasingly restricted formal medical degrees to men as the Middle Ages progressed. The daily, practical reality of healthcare remained firmly in the hands of women. Female physicians, surgeons, and apothecaries operated successful, independent practices across France, Italy, and Germany. They charged substantial fees for their medical diagnoses, prepared and sold complex herbal remedies, and were frequently retained on regular financial stipends by wealthy noble households or municipal town councils. Among these medical professionals, the medieval midwife held a unique, legally protected, and financially stable position. Midwifery was far more than a neighbourly favour. It was a highly respected public office. In major cities like Nuremberg, Paris, and London, midwives were formally licensed by the civic authorities. They received a guaranteed annual salary from the city treasury, supplemented by direct payments from the families they assisted. Because their testimony was legally binding in courts regarding matters of birthright and inheritance, their professional integrity was highly valued, granting them a position of significant social leverage and financial security. Beyond the medical realm, the rapid growth of medieval cities created a massive demand for outsourced domestic and industrial services, most notably the textile cleaning and laundering sector. This was not simple household chores, but a large-scale commercial industry dominated by women known as lavanderes or laundresses. In an era where clean linen was a profound symbol of social status and health, grand royal courts, wealthy merchant families, and massive monastic houses contracted these female-led enterprises to manage their extensive laundering needs. These women managed substantial business operations. They rented large plots of land along riverbanks, invested in expensive copper cauldrons and specialized wood ash soaps, and hired teams of assistants to handle the massive volume of textiles. The contracts preserved in municipal archives show that these female entrepreneurs negotiated long-term service agreements, managed complex payrolls, and defended their business territories against unauthorized competitors, proving their capacity to run profitable service-oriented corporations. As the night deepens and the distant church bells toll the midnight hour, we reflect on these diverse paths of female financial agency. Whether through the calculated prescription of a healing tincture or the organized management of an urban service industry, medieval women converted their specialized skills into reliable independent wealth. They were active, entrepreneurial agents within the professional economy, carving out secure spaces of financial autonomy through their dedication, intellect, and practical mastery of the world around them. As the night sky turns a deeper shade of midnight, let us reflect on the resilience of the human spirit, and specifically how medieval women navigated times of profound economic crisis and systemic instability. The Middle Ages were not a period of stagnant predictability. They were disrupted by sudden famines, shifting monetary values, political upheavals, and devastating plagues that could instantly collapse regional markets and dissolve long-standing family fortunes. In these moments of extreme financial peril, the survival of entire households depended on the adaptive strategies and economic resilience of women. When crises struck, such as the dramatic economic restructuring that followed the mid-14th century, the traditional structures of labour and wealth were turned upside down. With a sudden shortage of labour, the value of practical work soared, and land values fluctuated wildly. During these volatile periods, women demonstrated an extraordinary capacity to manage debt, liquidate assets strategically, and reorganize family enterprises to prevent absolute financial ruin. Faced with inflation or the sudden devaluation of royal coinage, astute women shifted their wealth away from unstable paper tollies and volatile currencies into tangible, high-value physical assets. They invested their surplus capital into durable goods that maintained intrinsic value across borders and crises: heavy silver belts, gold-threaded textiles, precious metal chalices, and secure plots of urban real estate. These items were not merely luxury decorations, they functioned as a private emergency reserve fund that could be quietly pawned, leased, or sold to liquidity providers when cash became dangerously scarce. Furthermore, court arbitration registries from these periods show an influx of women actively restructuring debts. If a husband died leaving behind a mountain of commercial liabilities, the widow would step into the legal arena to negotiate with creditors. She would offer structured payment plans, settle disputes out of court through mutual concessions, and petition local magistrates for temporary tax relief, utilizing her profound understanding of mercantile law to preserve the core assets of her family estate from being seized by aggressive moneylenders. Before we explore the concluding historical reflections of these remarkable economic journeys, let us pause for a final, gentle moment together. If this peaceful exploration of our shared past has brought a sense of calm and comfort to your evening, please take a soft moment to subscribe to Sleepy History with Kevin, press the like button, and turn on the notification bell. Your gentle presence and ongoing support mean everything to us, helping this sanctuary of rest and learning reach every weary soul looking for peace in the quiet hours of the night. In the wake of economic downturns, many women also formed informal financial cooperatives. Neighbors would pool their small savings together to purchase expensive communal tools such as a large bread oven, a heavy textile loom, or a shared beast of burden, allowing them to continue production and generate income collectively when individual financing was entirely impossible. These grassroots mutual aid networks, designed and sustained by women, acted as the invisible pillars of economic stability that kept local communities connected and functional during the darkest chapters of history. As the gentle silence of the late night embraces the world, we honor these strategic minds that refuse to break under the pressure of adversity. Medieval women were not passive victims of economic storms. They were the practical, clear-headed navigators who calculated risks, protected inheritances, and engineered creative financial survival strategies, ensuring that the flame of commerce and domestic stability continued to burn brightly, safeguarding the future for the generations yet to come. As the velvet darkness of the night reaches its deepest tranquility, we gather the scattered threads of our long journey through time. We have walked through the bustling markets of 14th century London, listened to the rhythmic hum of spinning wheels in rural cottages, entered the powerful administrative chambers of wealthy abbesses, and looked over the shoulders of elite female merchants balancing their international ledger books by candlelight. In every corner of this medieval world, we have found the undeniable imprint of women's financial intelligence. History, in its grand and official retellings, has often forgotten the quiet, daily transactions that built the foundations of our modern economic systems. It is easy to overlook the silver pennies exchanged for a batch of freshly brewed ale, the meticulously structured dowry contracts, or the small loans advanced to a neighbour in need. Yet it was precisely these microtransactions, managed with absolute precision and unyielding resilience by ordinary women, that kept the fragile machinery of medieval society moving forward across generations. These women navigated a world of rigid legal doctrines and heavy cultural limitations. They were not always the primary authors of the laws, but they were masterful authors of their own financial destinies within those laws. By utilizing legal loopholes like the status of the independent merchant, by fiercely guarding their dower lands, and by stepping boldly into the shoes of guildmasters and shipping magnates when duty called, they proved that economic agency is not defined by gender, but by intellect, strategy, and practical capability. As you drift closer to a deep, restoring sleep, let the knowledge of their quiet strength bring a sense of peace to your mind. Their names may have faded from the prominent stone monuments of history, but their legacy remains permanently inked into the dusty court rolls, the lasting testaments, and the structural stability of the world they helped to finance and sustain. They remind us that the truest history is often found not in the shouting of battles, but in the quiet, deliberate choices made in the stillness of the everyday world. This content is inspired by and adapted from public domain works available through Project Gutenberg. The material has been transformed through original narration, editing, and storytelling to create a unique experience for educational and entertainment purposes. The stories of these financial pioneers now rest safely in the archives of the past, their echoes blending into the soft rhythm of your breathing. The ledger books are closed, the candles have burned down to gentle embers, and the marketplace of the old world is completely still under the watchful gaze of the midnight stars. The paths they carved remain open, a timeless testament to human resourcefulness, waiting in the quiet shadows of history for those who care to listen. As the deep stillness of the night continues to wrap around the world, let us softly slide our gaze toward another remarkable, yet frequently overlooked aspect of the financial lives of medieval women: their intuitive mastery of risk diversification and early forms of community insurance. In an era where a single harsh winter, a sudden river flood, or an unexpected fire could reduce a flourishing workshop or a bountiful farm to ashes, medieval women did not merely rely on luck. They developed highly pragmatic, collective systems to safeguard their material wealth and protect their families from sudden economic ruin. In the rural villages and small agrarian townships that dotted the medieval landscape, women established informal economic networks that operated remarkably like modern mutual aid societies. When a peasant woman successfully managed her poultry yard or produced a surplus of rich, aged cheeses, she did not always seek to immediately convert every single asset into silver coin. Instead, she often invested her extra yields into social capital within her community. She would loan grain to a young mother whose family crops had failed, or provide free woolen yarn to a neighbour recovering from illness, under a strict unwritten code of mutual reciprocity. This was not merely simple charity, it was a carefully calculated strategy of social insurance. By investing in the survival of her neighbours during their dark days, a medieval woman guaranteed that when an unexpected crisis knocked on her own door, the community would stand ready to repay the debt, ensuring her household's continuous financial stability. On a larger commercial scale, urban women and affluent widows who managed substantial workshops displayed an advanced understanding of asset insulation. Records from medieval town councils show that female entrepreneurs were among the earliest participants in collective guild funds designed to support members during emergencies. A female master weaver or an independent baker would contribute regular small payments of silver pennies into a communal chest held by the guild. If her workshop was damaged by fire, or if she became too elderly to operate the machinery herself, this early insurance fund would provide regular payouts, securing her independence and preventing her from becoming a financial burden to her relatives. Furthermore, medieval women were highly proactive in managing food security as a form of financial defense. Within the thick stone walls of their domestic properties, women managed the construction and maintenance of specialized storehouses, smokehouses, and root cellars. They understood the fluctuating economics of scarcity, meticulously hoarding grain, salted meats, and preserved fats during seasons of absolute abundance when prices were low. When inflation struck, or when a bad harvest caused the prices of basic foodstuffs to skyrocket in the city markets, these prepared women could avoid purchasing expensive goods from opportunistic merchant syndicates. In many cases, they were even able to sell their own preserved surpluses at a premium, turning a potential household crisis into a season of calculated financial profit. As the moonlight bathes the sleeping fields and silent timber houses in a soft silver glow, we can appreciate the profound foresight of these female economic strategists. They looked at the uncertain horizon of the medieval world and built invisible yet unbreakable networks of safety and security. Their financial wisdom was measured not just by the accumulation of wealth, but by their incredible ability to shield that wealth from the unpredictable currents of time, ensuring that the legacy of their daily labor endured through every passing storm. Let the soft, rhythmic breathing of the night carry you deeper into the quiet chambers of the past, where we discover how medieval women invested not only in physical goods and land, but also in the invisible wealth of the future, the education, literacy, and professional training of the next generation. In the shifting economic landscape of the late Middle Ages, pure physical labor was no longer the only path to financial security. Success increasingly required the ability to read legal contracts, calculate compound interest, convert foreign currencies, and navigate complex municipal regulations. Medieval mothers, with a profound understanding of this changing reality, became the primary drivers of educational investment within the family structure. When we look closely at surviving apprenticeship contracts preserved in urban archives, we find numerous documents bearing the signatures or marks of independent women and widows who stepped forward as the sole financial sponsors for their children's professional futures. Securing a premium apprenticeship for a child within a prestigious guild, such as the goldsmiths, the mercers, or the vintners, required a substantial upfront financial sacrifice. A mother had to pay a significant premium entry fee to the master craftsman, provide for her child's clothing and tools, and legally guarantee to indemnify the master against any financial losses or damages caused by the apprentice. These women willingly liquidated portions of their personal property, sold inherited silver spoons, or reallocated profits from their own shops to secure these positions, fully understanding that a guild education was the most secure, long-term financial asset they could ever pass down. But perhaps even more extraordinary was the investment these women made in the education of their daughters, in merchant households and prosperous artisanal families. Mothers recognized that a daughter who possessed basic literacy and advanced numerical skills was a formidable economic asset. They hired private tutors, often local educated women or clerks, to teach their daughters the precise arts of double-entry bookkeeping, the tracking of inventory, and the legal phrasing required to draft valid business receipts. This education was not intended for drawing-room leisure. It was a practical shield designed for economic survival. A young woman who could confidently calculate the true weight and value of silver coins, or read the fine print of a commercial shipping lease, was capable of protecting her family's assets from predatory competitors, executing her husband's business orders during his long absences. Through these deliberate investments in human capital, medieval women quietly elevated the baseline of economic literacy across their entire society. They transformed the domestic home into a primary school of commerce, passing down practical mathematical knowledge and legal awareness directly to their daughters and sons by the gentle light of the evening fire. As the midnight stars hold their silent vigil over the sleeping towns, We can reflect on the profound foresight of these maternal strategists. They looked far beyond their own lifespans, transforming their hard-earned silver into intellectual armor for their children. Their financial legacy was not just left in stone chests or written in parchment ledgers. It was permanently etched into the capable minds of the generation that followed, ensuring that the flame of independent female enterprise would continue to burn brightly throughout the unfolding chapters of history. As the deep velvet night stretches across the ancient landscape, let your mind wander along the grand, unpaved highways and winding river trade routes that connected the distant kingdoms of medieval Europe. Along these paths, thousands of travellers, merchants, pilgrims, messengers, and wandering scholars journeyed daily from town to town. When the sun began to set beneath the horizon, these weary travellers sought safety, food, and shelter within the stone walls of local inns and taverns. It is here, within the fast-growing hospitality industry, that medieval women established a powerful, lucrative, and highly visible economic presence. The management of a medieval inn or tavern was a demanding, multifaceted business enterprise that required immense administrative capability, strict financial control, and sharp social intelligence. In many urban centres and bustling roadside villages, women operated as the primary owners and managers of these busy establishments. For a widow inheriting a large property, converting her home into a licensed inn was one of the most reliable strategies to generate a continuous, independent stream of cash income. Imagine the complex financial dance a female innkeeper had to choreograph every single day. She had to manage large-scale bulk purchasing contracts with local bakers, butchers, and wine merchants, ensuring her kitchens were constantly supplied while negotiating prices to maximize her profit margins. She kept precise tallies of the food and drink consumed by her guests, calculated the fluctuating overnight lodging fees based on the quality of the rooms, and managed the daily wages of a substantial staff of cooks, stable hands, and domestic servants. Furthermore, medieval innkeepers acted as informal bankers and security guardians for their guests. Travelling merchants carrying large bags of gold and silver coins across dangerous roads needed a secure place to deposit their wealth overnight. A female innkeeper would provide heavy, iron-bound wooden chests within her private quarters, logging the deposited items and taking personal responsibility for their safekeeping. This service built deep institutional trust, ensuring that wealthy international trading networks continuously directed their business and their silver back to her establishment year after year. These women also had to navigate a complex web of municipal taxes, alcohol licensing fees, and strict local regulations regarding weights and measures. Court archives contain numerous records of female innkeepers confidently defending their business operations against overzealous tax collectors, proving that they kept meticulous financial accounts that could withstand official scrutiny from town magistrates. They protected their commercial spaces fiercely, establishing clear rules of conduct within their properties to maintain an honourable reputation that attracted the highest-paying clientele. As the late-night silence finally settles over the great stone hearths of those ancient taverns, and the last of the travellers fall into a deep, peaceful sleep, we can appreciate the immense resilience of these female entrepreneurs. They stood at the crossroads of a mobile, shifting society, turning the basic human needs of shelter, food, and security into a thriving, organised commercial empire. Their independence was forged in the heat of busy kitchens and the precise calculations of daily ledger books, leaving an indelible mark on the commercial landscape of the medieval world, while the quiet earth rested beneath the silver moon. As the world outside falls into a profound and quiet stillness, let the soft light of the moon guide our attention back inside the high stone walls of the major medieval metropolises, beyond the immediate rush of the daily marketplaces and the industrial hum of the craft workshops. A more silent, long-term form of wealth generation was taking place, the development of urban real estate. In the fast-growing cities of the late 14th and 15th centuries, land and space were at an absolute premium. Within this highly lucrative arena, independent women developed a sophisticated understanding of property investment, lease negotiation, and passive income generation. Surviving property deeds, tax assessment books, and building rental registries reveal that women, particularly wealthy widows and unmarried women of means, were significant landowners in major commercial centres. They understood that while trades could fluctuate and currencies could be devalued by royal decrees, the physical earth beneath the city streets and the timber-framed buildings that lined the thoroughfares remained a permanent, appreciating source of security and power. Imagine an entrepreneurial woman working with a town scrivener to map out her real estate portfolio. These women did not just hold on to an inherited family home, they actively purchased additional properties, subdivided large plots of land, and built multi-story tenements designed specifically to maximize rental income. They rented out the valuable ground-floor storefronts to merchant guilds and master artisans who required high-visibility locations to display their wares, while leasing the upper residential levels to labourers, clerks, and foreign students, creating a structured, recurring stream of monthly or quarterly cash flow. This level of property management demanded an exceptional command of contractual law and municipal zoning regulations. A female landlord had to draft precise lease agreements that specified the exact duration of the tenancy, the responsibilities for expensive structural repairs, such as replacing rotting timber beams or retiling roofs after a winter storm, and the penalties for non-payment of rent. When tenants fell behind on their financial obligations, these women did not hesitate to bring their cases before the town's property courts, demonstrating an unwavering determination to protect their investment returns and assert their legal rights as owners. Moreover, these property-owning women often engaged in early forms of urban development. They would pool their capital to finance the construction of communal wells, paved alleyways, or shared defensive walls adjoining their properties, fully recognizing that improving the local infrastructure would increase the overall market value of their real estate holdings and attract wealthier, more reliable tenants. They were forward-thinking investors, balancing short-term maintenance costs against long-term capital appreciation with a level of financial skill that closely mirrors modern property management. As the late-night air cools the ancient stone arches, and the city gatekeepers turn their keys for the final time tonight, we can see these property ledgers being closed and locked away in iron-bound chests. These female landlords built more than just financial security for themselves, they literally shaped the architectural and economic landscape of the developing medieval city. Their independence was anchored firmly in the bricks, mortar, and stone of the urban world, leaving behind a lasting foundation of wealth that quietly echoed through the centuries, while the world slept under a blanket of stars. As the deep silence of the midnight hours lengthens across the ancient world, let us explore a very delicate and beautifully subtle strategy of medieval finance, the world of pious patronage, charitable endowments, and artistic commissions. To modern eyes, when a wealthy medieval woman donated a beautiful stained glass window to a cathedral, built a stone chapel, or left a large sum of silver to a local hospital for the poor, it appeared to be an act of pure, selfless religious devotion. While the spiritual intent was undoubtedly real, these actions also functioned as highly sophisticated, legally recognized instruments of financial management, estate protection, and social asset insulation. In the complex political landscape of the Middle Ages, holding massive amounts of liquid wealth or unattached land carried a significant amount of hidden danger. Monarchs and powerful territorial lords facing expensive wars often looked for reasons to seize the estates of wealthy citizens, particularly those of independent widows or unmarried female heirs. To shield their hard-earned fortunes from such predatory confiscations, astute women discovered that transferring a portion of their assets into religious or charitable trusts was an elegant, unbreakable line of defense. Once a property or a fund of silver was legally dedicated to a religious foundation, a hospital, or a house of poor relief, it came under the protective umbrella of canon law. This meant that secular kings and greedy lords could no longer touch or confiscate those assets without risking absolute excommunication from the church. However, The clever design of these charitable contracts often allowed the female donor to retain significant, lifelong administrative control over the property. A wealthy woman would establish a chantry or a small sanctuary, appointing her own trusted clerks to run it, dictating exactly how the revenues from the attached farmlands should be distributed, and guaranteeing herself a comfortable, tax-exempt income from the estate for the rest of her natural life. It was a brilliant synthesis of spiritual security and financial preservation, allowing women to outmaneuver the aggressive fiscal demands of the state while elevating their personal prestige within the high society of their towns. Furthermore, by commissioning high-value works of art, such as beautifully illuminated prayer books, woven tapestries, or precious silver chalices engraved with their family crests, women were effectively transferring volatile cash reserves into highly portable elite luxury commodities. These items maintained a steady, internationally recognized material value that could easily survive regional currency crashes or political exiles. They could be transported across borders with relative ease, used as high-end collateral to secure emergency loans from foreign banking houses, or passed down directly to daughters as non-taxable personal inheritances. As the pale moonlight washes over the quiet carved stone altars and the cold glass of the great cathedrals, we can see the deep foresight hidden within these acts of generosity. These medieval women turned their wealth into beautiful, permanent landmarks of culture and community care. They protected their legacies from the ravages of political greed and ensured that their names, their families, and their financial achievements were preserved in the most secure sanctuaries of their era, leaving an enduring testament of strength that stood firm while the centuries quietly rolled away into the night. As the soft, cool air of the deep night flows over the landscape, let your mind drift toward the banks of the great winding rivers of medieval Europe. The Rhine, the Danube, the Seine, and the Thames were the true highways of the old world, carrying the lifeblood of commerce far into the interior of the continent. While we often imagine these busy waterways filled only with rugged boatmen and wealthy merchant princes, the archival records of river ports reveal a fascinating reality. Independent women were actively financing, directing, and operating regional river trade networks, controlling the flow of essential commodities between rural hinterlands and expanding urban markets. Managing river-based commerce required a unique combination of logistical foresight, sharp price calculation, and tireless administrative vigilance. Women engaged in this sector were rarely dealing in luxury silks or rare spices. Instead, they built their financial stability on high-volume everyday necessities, such as blocks of preserving salt, barrels of salted herring, seasonal grain supplies, and bundles of wood and charcoal needed to heat the growing timber cities through the bitter winters. Imagine a female river merchant standing on a heavy wooden wharf as the morning mist begins to clear. She is overseeing the loading of a wide, flat-bottomed wooden barge. She has calculated the cost of the raw timber or grain purchased from rural producers, balanced it against the wages of the oarsmen and labourers she has hired, and estimated the precise arrival time at the next major urban market downriver, where demand and prices are highest. One of the greatest financial challenges these river entrepreneurs faced was the predatory system of regional river tolls. Every few miles, a local feudal lord or a fortified monastery would establish a checkpoint along the riverbank, demanding a tax in silver or a percentage of the cargo in exchange for safe passage through their territory. To maintain a profitable enterprise, these women had to be masterful negotiators. They memorized the shifting toll rates of every jurisdiction, carried official municipal certificates exempting them from certain feudal exactions, and when necessary took corrupt toll collectors to court to defend their commercial profit margins. These female river traders also developed sophisticated networks of local agents and warehouse managers across multiple river towns. They rented storage facilities along the stone banks, allowing them to hold their bulk goods safely until market conditions became optimal, rather than being forced to sell immediately upon arrival at a discount. By controlling both the transport and the storage of these essential goods, they managed to insulate their businesses from sudden price drops, ensuring a steady, predictable return on their invested capital. As the quiet waters of the river ripple softly under the silver light of the midnight stars, the heavy barges are tied securely to the iron rings of the dark piers, and the bustling wharves fall into a peaceful silence. These resilient women proved that their financial vision could master the complex shifting currents of regional logistics. They connected isolated communities, stabilized urban food supplies, and built enduring commercial reputations that commanded absolute respect along every mile of the winding waterways, leaving an indelible mark on the foundations of internal trade while the world slept securely in the deep shadows of the night. As the silent midnight hours deepen and the stars hold their quiet position in the dark sky, let us journey into a world of stone, earth and heavy industry, a domain that modern memory almost exclusively assigns to the strength of men. In the late Middle Ages, the extraction of valuable minerals such as silver, tin, iron, coal and rock salt became the driving force behind the rapid industrialization of regional European economies. Yet hidden within the dusty account books of mining operations from Germany, Bohemia and the hills of England, we discover that independent women were operating as significant mine owners, capital investors and financial directors of these heavy industrial enterprises. The ownership of a mining concession in the 14th and 15th centuries was a highly lucrative yet immensely capital-intensive endeavour. It required vast upfront wealth to dig deep drainage adits, construct heavy wooden water wheels to pump out subterranean water, hire teams of specialized miners, and purchase expensive smelting equipment. Independent noblewomen and wealthy widows of merchant magnates often found themselves inheriting these complex industrial properties, and rather than selling them off to male competitors, they chose to manage them with remarkable financial grit and long-term vision. Imagine an industrial mistress sitting at a heavy oak table reviewing reports brought to her from the mining shafts. She had to understand the complex economics of production costs versus shifting market values for raw metals. These women negotiated supply contracts with royal mints for silver or with international armourers' guilds for high-quality iron and tin. They managed large payrolls for specialized engineers, calculated the heavy costs of fuel needed to keep the smelting furnaces burning day and night, and organized the secure armed transport required to move refined metal bars across dangerous territory to major trade hubs. The legal frameworks governing medieval mining were highly specialized, often separate from standard customary law, and these female owners navigated them with absolute precision. In regions like Cornwall or Saxony, mining communities operated under unique stannary or mountain laws, which granted special tax exemptions and legal privileges to mine operators. Female owners fiercely protected these industrial rights before royal commissioners, ensuring that local feudal lords could not impose illegal tariffs on their mineral yields or interfere with their production schedules. Furthermore, these female industrialist leaders displayed a sophisticated understanding of resource management. Mining was an industry plagued by sudden depletion of veins or unexpected underground flooding. To protect their financial stability, these women often reinvested their mining profits into surrounding woodlands, ensuring a permanent controlled supply of charcoal for their smelters, or they purchased agricultural lands nearby to provide cheap food supplies for their large workforces, effectively building integrated corporate ecosystems that minimized external market dependencies. As the cold night wind sweeps across the dark hills and the heavy iron hammers of the silent furnaces finally rest for the night, we can see the deep impact left by these industrial pioneers. They proved that their financial competence could master the roughest, most demanding sectors of the medieval economy. Their wealth was forged in the deep recesses of the earth and refined in the heat of heavy commerce, leaving a powerful, lasting legacy of industrial management that quietly sustained the material foundations of their world while the earth slept in peaceful darkness. As the deep velvet night draws its quiet mantle even closer around the sleeping earth, let us turn our gaze to a brilliant and revolutionary sector of the late medieval economy, the production, distribution, and trade of books. Before the mid-15th century, every single volume was a luxury masterpiece, meticulously written by hand onto expensive animal parchment. As the Middle Ages transitioned into the early Renaissance, the demand for knowledge, law, and literature exploded across Europe. Within this highly prestigious and lucrative knowledge economy, independent women established a vibrant presence as scriptorium managers, parchment suppliers, and early investors in the revolutionary technology of the printing press. Operating a commercial manuscript workshop required an exceptional combination of cultural literacy, capital management, and supply chain organization. Women who directed these specialized enterprises did not merely look at books as spiritual or intellectual items. They understood them as high-margin, luxury commodities. They managed contracts with university scholars who needed textbooks, negotiated with wealthy nobles who commissioned personalized prayer books filled with gold leaf, and organized the daily wages of teams of professional male and female scribes and artists. Imagine a female stationer or book merchant sitting in her light-filled studio in Paris, Bologna, or Bruges. Before her are detailed accounts tracking the purchase of raw materials. She had to secure large quantities of fine calfskin or sheepskin, calculate the heavy costs of rare chemical pigments imported from distant trade routes, such as lapis lazuli for brilliant blues, and ensure that the binding materials were of the highest standard. These women held a profound monopoly over the quality of intellectual transmission, and they priced their completed volumes to reflect the immense capital and skilled labor embedded within them. With the dramatic introduction of movable type and early printing technologies in the late 15th century, the financial scale of the book trade altered completely. Rather than being pushed out by this mechanical revolution, many enterprising women adapted instantly, becoming key financiers of early printing houses. Wealthy widows of master printers frequently inherited the massive heavy iron presses, the specialized metal type foundries, and the valuable distribution contracts with regional book fairs. These female publishers managed substantial financial risks. Printing a run of several hundred identical books required an immense upfront investment in paper and ink before a single coin could be made from sales. To protect their capital, these women developed highly sophisticated marketing and distribution networks. They sent traveling book agents across borders, established retail stalls near major cathedrals and university faculties, and secured royal or ecclesiastical privileges that protected their printed editions from being copied by unauthorized pirated presses. As the late-night quiet deepens and the heavy wooden presses of the silent printing shops rest until the morning light, we can marvel at the profound foresight of these intellectual entrepreneurs. They turned the preservation of human thought into a highly profitable, structured commercial industry. Their independence was woven into the very pages and ink of the books that transformed the human mind, leaving an enduring financial and cultural legacy that quietly shaped the modern world, while the rest of society slept in peaceful darkness. As the deep, silent hours of the late night hold the world in complete stillness, let our journey transport us to the mist-shrouded coastlines of the North Sea and the Baltic. In the late medieval period, a massive and highly lucrative industry dominated European commerce, the maritime fishing and preservation trade. Because the religious calendar dictated over 100 days of fasting each year, during which the consumption of meat was strictly forbidden, the demand for preserved fish was monumental. Within this high-stakes coastal economy, independent women emerged as formidable operators, financing fishing fleets, dominating the salt-curing industry, and controlling major wholesale distribution networks. Operating a commercial fish preservation enterprise on the medieval coast required an exceptional understanding of large-scale logistics, strict quality control, and international supply dynamics. Women who directed these waterfront businesses were not simple dockworkers. They were maritime entrepreneurs who understood how to transform a highly perishable natural resource into a stable, long-lasting financial asset that could be transported hundreds of miles into the mainland. Imagine a female merchant standing on a heavy stone pier as the fishing boats return under the twilight sky. She is managing a vast network of specialized laborers. Her first financial challenge was securing thousands of pounds of high-grade preserving salt, often imported from the distant salt pans of southwestern France. She had to calculate the cost of this salt, balance it against the wages of the gutting teams and the coopers who crafted the airtight wooden barrels, and ensure that the preservation process began immediately to prevent the loss of her valuable inventory. These female coastal entrepreneurs held significant monopolies over the regional storage and curing yards. Surviving guild tax records from maritime towns show that women owned substantial waterfront properties, including large smoking houses and salting warehouses. They did not sell their products in small quantities to local consumers. Instead, they dealt in bulk wholesale, signing lucrative contracts with internal merchant guilds, monastic institutions, and military commissaries who required thousands of barrels of salted herring and dried cod to feed entire populations through the lean winter months. Furthermore, these women displayed an advanced understanding of maritime legal customs and trade protections. They were active participants in the great seasonal trade fairs that defined the Baltic economy, where they negotiated prices with international buyers, managed complex multi-currency transactions, and utilized maritime courts to resolve disputes over broken delivery schedules or substandard barrel construction. They defended their commercial positions with absolute legal precision, ensuring that foreign merchant cartels could not squeeze them out of their historical fishing rights or dictate unfavorable market terms. As the quiet waves of the cold ocean lap softly against the dark wooden pilings of the silent piers, and the vast processing yards fall into a peaceful rest under the silver moon, we can appreciate the immense organizational strength of these coastal pioneers. They turned the unforgiving elements of the sea into a structured, highly predictable engine of wealth. Their financial independence was anchored firmly in the vital infrastructure of food security, leaving an enduring legacy of industrial capability that quietly fed and sustained the medieval world while the earth slept in beautiful, undisturbed tranquility. As the velvet darkness of the late night deepens into its most serene hours, let us step into a world filled with the delicate, intoxicating scents of crushed lavender, sweet rosewater, rare frankincense, and precious ambergris. In the flourishing urban centres of the late 14th and 15th centuries, the expansion of wealth gave rise to an elite consumer market focused on personal luxury, grooming, and specialized cosmetics. Within this highly profitable, chemically sophisticated arena, independent women established a dominant position as master distillers, luxury apothecaries, and creators of high-end aromatic products, serving the wealthy merchant patricians and the royal courts of Europe. The production of luxury aromatics and cosmetics was far more than a simple domestic craft. It was a highly specialized branch of early chemical manufacturing that yielded immense financial profit. Women who operated these upscale apothecary businesses required not only a profound knowledge of botany and distillation techniques, but also a sharp entrepreneurial mind capable of managing expensive exotic supply chains that stretched across Africa, Asia, and the Mediterranean. Imagine a female distiller working in her quiet candlelit laboratory in Florence, Paris, or Nuremberg. Around her are complex copper alembics, glass vials, and heavy stone mortars. She had to manage the high upfront capital costs of importing raw ingredients such as Persian saffron, Byzantine silk powders, or expensive oils from the Levant, calculating exactly how many drops of concentrated essence could be extracted to cover her initial investments and ensure a massive return on the finished product. These female cosmetic entrepreneurs guarded their secret formulas with absolute professional secrecy, effectively managing early forms of intellectual property. They created highly sought-after anti-aging creams, premium hair dyes, solid perfume pomanders, and fragrant medicinal soaps that commanded exorbitant prices among the nobility. Because their clientele consisted of the highest tiers of society, these women built exclusive direct-to-court distribution networks, bypassing ordinary marketplace regulations and charging premium rates that easily insulated their businesses from local economic downturns. Furthermore, surviving financial records showed that these women were masters of product branding and luxury packaging. They did not sell their precious creations in generic clay pots. Instead, they commissioned local artisans to craft delicate Venetian glass bottles, intricately carved ivory boxes, and silver-plated containers to hold their balms and waters. By elevating the aesthetic presentation of their goods, they successfully transformed a practical grooming product into a powerful symbol of social status, allowing them to maintain an elite monopoly over the urban luxury market and secure a position of outstanding wealth and personal independence. As the quiet night air carries the faint, lingering trace of sweet blossoms through the dark stone streets, and the small glass vials sit safely locked inside deep wooden cabinets, we can appreciate the brilliant sophistication of these aesthetic pioneers. They turned the sensory pleasures of beauty and fragrance into a highly organized, lucrative scientific enterprise. Their financial freedom was built on the precise mastery of nature's secrets and the sophisticated desires of high society, leaving behind a fragrant, enduring legacy of female ingenuity that quietly echoed through the centuries, while the world slept in peaceful, uninterrupted rest. As the deep, silent hours of the night stretch onward under a blanket of distant stars, let our imagination drift into the high-vaulted spaces of the great medieval cathedrals and civic halls. In the late Middle Ages, these monumental structures were not just places of faith and governance, they were the centers of an immense architectural and artistic economy. One of the most expensive, technically demanding and highly valued industries of this era was the creation of stained glass and architectural mosaics. Within this vibrant sector, specialized archives reveal that elite women operated as master glassmakers, workshop owners, and major contractors who managed the production of the brilliant windows that illuminated the medieval world. Directing a medieval glass or mosaic workshop was an enterprise that required an extraordinary combination of industrial chemistry, architectural engineering, and rigorous financial management. Stained glass was a high-risk, capital-intensive asset. A single mistake in the firing process or a miscalculation in the structural leading could shatter an investment worth thousands of silver pennies. Imagine a female master glassmaker standing in her hot, glowing workshop in Paris, York, or Cologne. Before her, a heavy stone furnace is burning wood at extreme temperatures. Her first financial challenge was the strategic sourcing of raw materials. She had to buy bulk sand, potash, and rare metallic oxides, such as cobalt for deep blues and copper for vibrant reds, calculating the exact ratios needed to produce consistent, brilliant colors while balancing her operating budget against the tight deadlines dictated by church building committees. These female workshop masters were highly capable participants in the competitive municipal bidding arenas. When a city decided to build a new guild hall or expand a cathedral nave, they would issue public tenders for the window glazings. Surviving contract roles show that independent women submitted detailed technical blueprints, presented material cost estimates, and won major civic commissions over male competitors. They signed legally binding agreements that specified delivery timelines, managed large teams of journeyman glasscutters and apprentices, and assumed full financial liability for any damage that occurred during the dangerous installation process high above the stone floors. Furthermore, these women possessed a sophisticated understanding of labor economics and contract enforcement. Because skilled glass painters and cutters were rare and highly mobile, female masters developed retention strategies, offering structured wages, comfortable workshop lodgings, and performance bonuses to keep their best artisans from being lured away by competing studios. They guarded their workshops' proprietary design books and secret chemical recipes for glass pigments with absolute vigilance, ensuring that their family businesses maintained a sharp, profitable edge in the regional luxury market. As the late-night silence finally cools the great brick ovens of the glass workshops, and the brilliant unfinished windows rest safely in their wooden racks until the morning sun, we can reflect on the luminous legacy of these female entrepreneurs. They turned raw earth, fire and light into a magnificent, enduring commercial empire. Their independence was written in the vibrant, unbreakable colours of the monumental windows that defined the landscape of their cities, leaving a legacy of structural beauty and industrial brilliance that quietly watched over the world while it slept in peaceful, undisturbed tranquility. As the deep velvet night maintains its peaceful hold over the world, let us journey into the quiet valleys and riverbanks where another fundamental engine of the medieval economic revolution was taking shape: the production of paper and specialized writing materials. In the 14th and 15th centuries, the explosive growth of international banking, merchant networks and municipal law courts created an insatiable, unprecedented demand for records. Every transaction required a receipt, every loan demanded a ledger entry, and every property boundary required a deed. Within this massive, essential paper economy, records reveal that enterprising women were operating as primary owners of water-powered paper mills, major suppliers of raw materials, and directors of urban stationery enterprises. Transitioning from traditional expensive animal parchment to early manufactured rag paper was a highly technical industrial process that required significant capital investment and rigorous management. A paper mill was not a small domestic workshop. It was a complex facility situated along fast-flowing rivers, utilizing heavy water wheels to drive massive wooden hammers that crushed raw textiles into a fine fibrous pulp. Imagine a female mill owner standing on a wooden gangway, listening to the rhythmic, churning splash of her water wheel in the midnight quiet. Her first major financial challenge was the systematic organization of the supply chain for raw materials. Before the era of wood pulp, paper was made entirely from recycled linen rags and hemp cords. These women established extensive networks of rag gatherers who combed through cities and villages to collect discarded textiles, calculating the bulk purchase costs against the purity of the fibre and ensuring a constant, predictable flow of material to feed the hungry vats of their mills. These female industrial managers possessed a highly advanced understanding of chemical processing and quality stabilization. They oversaw the precise boiling of the pulp, the delicate filtering of fibers through fine wire screens, and the critical sizing process, where sheets of paper were dipped into a warm gelatin bath made from animal hides to prevent ink from bleeding through the surface. A mill mistress who could consistently produce smooth, durable, insect-resistant paper could secure long-term, high-value supply contracts with royal chanceries, elite banking houses like the Medici, and the rapidly multiplying printing presses of Europe. Furthermore, urban stationery records show that women were prominent figures in the wholesale distribution of these office supplies. They operated storefronts adjacent to university quarters and municipal courts, selling not only reams of paper, but also uniform ledger books, high-quality iron gall inks, and prepared goose quills. They negotiated bulk credit terms with students, lawyers, and public scriveners, managing complex accounts receivable and aggressively protecting their commercial market territory from unauthorized peddlers. As the late-night air cools the damp sheets of paper hanging to dry in the high lofts of the silent mills, and the heavy water wheels slow their rotation for the evening, we can appreciate the vital, invisible infrastructure these women sustained. They did not just participate in the medieval economy, they manufactured the very material that allowed that economy to be recorded, calculated, and preserved for future generations. Their financial independence was forged in the wet pulp and iron presses of a transformative industry, leaving an indelible imprint on the literate foundations of the modern world while the earth slept in beautiful, undisturbed tranquility. As the deep, silent current of the night carries us further into the twilight of the medieval era, let our minds drift toward the grand, salt-sprayed harbours of the Mediterranean and the Adriatic seas. In the golden age of maritime trade, cities like Venice and Genoa operated as the undisputed gateways to the exotic wealth of the East. The most lucrative and highly sought-after commodities in these global ports were Eastern spices, rare botanicals, and medicinal resins. While traditional history books often paint this high-stakes maritime world as an exclusively male playground, dusty maritime notary archives tell a far more fascinating story. Elite women were active, powerful venture capitalists who financed long-distance shipping voyages and directed the wholesale import of global luxury goods. Investing in maritime spice trade required an exceptional tolerance for financial risk and a highly sophisticated understanding of international investment structures. Because a single ship could be lost to pirates, violent autumn storms, or political embargoes, medieval merchants rarely financed a voyage entirely on their own. Instead, they utilized an early form of limited liability partnership known as the commender contract. Imagine a wealthy patrician woman sitting in her stone palazzo overlooking the Grand Canal as the midnight tides rise. She is reviewing a legal contract with a ship captain. Through the commender system, she would provide the heavy upfront capital, bags of silver coin or fine locally woven woolens, to finance the journey to Alexandria or Constantinople. The travelling captain would manage the physical navigation and buy the precious cargoes of black pepper, Sri Lankan cinnamon, ginger, and medicinal roots. Upon the ship's safe return, the female investor would claim up to 3/4 of the net commercial profits, successfully generating massive wealth without ever having to step foot on a dangerous ocean vessel. These female venture capitalists possessed a highly advanced understanding of global supply chain economics and pharmaceutical market demands. Spices in the Middle Ages were not merely kitchen seasonings. They were essential components in early medicine, used by doctors to balance the bodily humours and ward off devastating plagues. A female importer who could secure a direct shipment of pure, unadulterated saffron or rare medicinal resins could name her own price in the European markets. Surviving customs ledgers show that these women successfully bypassed local retail restrictions by selling their imported inventory in bulk directly to royal households, aristocratic courts, and the great monastic hospitals of Central Europe. They managed complex multi-currency accounts, calculated international shipping tariffs, and fiercely utilized maritime courts to claim financial compensation if a captain returned with damaged or short-weighted cargo, demonstrating an uncompromising determination to protect their invested capital. As the gentle waves lap against the stone foundations of the sleeping port cities, and the tall masts of the great merchant galleons rock softly under the silver moonlight, we can marvel at the expansive global vision of these female financiers. They sat at the very heart of the world's first globalized trade networks, transforming the raw wealth of distant continents into a permanent foundation of personal and familial independence. Their sharp intellect and calculated risks helped to fuel the commercial revolution of Europe, leaving an indelible mark on the history of global enterprise while the world rested in beautiful, undisturbed tranquility. As the silent currents of the midnight hour slow the world into a state of perfect rest, let our journey ascend into the high towers and scholarly chambers of the late medieval cities. The late 14th and 15th centuries marked a quiet scientific revolution across Europe. Cities began installing massive mechanical clocks on their town halls, universities expanded their astronomical studies, and maritime captains demanded increasingly precise navigation instruments. Within this highly specialized, high-tech sector of early horology and instrument manufacturing, archival records reveal that talented women operated as master instrument makers, technicians, and financial managers of workshops that crafted the precision tools of the changing era. Operating a precision mechanics workshop in the late Middle Ages required a level of mathematical literacy, metallurgy knowledge, and design accuracy that was incredibly rare. These establishments produced complex brass, astrolabes, sundials, specialized compasses, and early internal clockwork gears, items that were valued not by their physical weight but by the intellectual precision embedded within their metal surfaces. Imagine a female master instrument maker working in the soft glow of her midnight candle in Nuremberg, Paris, or Valencia. Before her is a heavy brass plate, which she is meticulously engraving with intricate astronomical coordinate lines. Many of these women were daughters or wives of elite clockmakers and goldsmiths who had been fully trained in the mathematical secrets of the trade from a young age. When they inherited these prestigious workshops, they possessed the unique technical capability to calculate the varying degrees of latitude, calibrate copper gears for public town clocks, and cast perfect brass components that met the rigorous standards of university professors and royal astrologers. These female tech entrepreneurs managed highly lucrative, elite commercial portfolios. An astrolabe, or a calibrated sea compass, was an extraordinary luxury asset requiring months of intense, highly skilled labour to complete. A female master did not waste her inventory on general markets. Instead, she negotiated direct commissions with wealthy university faculties, international merchant syndicates, and noble patrons who sought these instruments as supreme symbols of intellectual prestige. Surviving business ledgers show that these women managed complex pricing structures that factored in the cost of imported high-grade brass, the hours of precision engraving required, and the mathematical consulting fees associated with customizing instruments for specific regional latitudes. They defended their workshops' proprietary design templates with absolute vigilance, ensuring that rival guilds could not copy their precise gear ratios or infringe upon their specialized manufacturing methods. As the late-night air cools the fine brass shavings on the workshop floors and the heavy iron pendulums of the city's public clocks tick with a slow, soothing rhythm in the darkness, we can appreciate the immense intellectual power of these scientific pioneers. They proved that female financial and technical intelligence could conquer the most complex, sophisticated technological boundaries of their age. Their independence was beautifully engraved into the enduring brass instruments that helped humanity map the stars and navigate the wide oceans, leaving a brilliant legacy of mathematical precision that quietly watched over the earth while it slept in deep, undisturbed peace. As the deep velvet night cradles the earth in absolute stillness, let our journey wander toward the smoking kilns and clay-rich riverbanks that sat just outside the gates of late medieval cities. In the 14th and 15th centuries, European architecture underwent a profound transformation to protect expanding urban centres from the constant terror of catastrophic fires. Municipal governments ordered a massive shift away from traditional timber housing toward durable brick and tile construction. Simultaneously, the rise of a wealthy merchant class created an insatiable demand for fine glazed ceramic tableware, such as the famous Italian Majolica. Within this booming earth and fire industry, archival records reveal that enterprising women operated as primary owners of large-scale brickworks, tile kilns, and elite ceramic studios. Directing a medieval brickmaking or fine ceramic enterprise was a rigorous, highly organized commercial endeavor that required deep technical knowledge, large capital reserves, and sharp logistical management. Clay production was not a delicate domestic hobby. It was a heavy seasonal industry that required transforming raw earth into valuable structural assets capable of weathering centuries. Imagine a female kiln mistress standing near her grand brick ovens as the midnight embers glow softly in the darkness. Her first major financial and logistical challenge was the seasonal acquisition and preparation of raw materials. She had to secure extensive access to premium clay beds along riverbanks, calculate the heavy costs of purchasing and transporting tons of firewood to keep her kilns burning at consistent extreme temperatures, and manage large teams of rough seasonal labourers who dug, moulded and dried the raw bricks before firing. These female industrial managers possessed a highly advanced understanding of contract negotiation and municipal market demands. Because cities required hundreds of thousands of uniform fire-baked bricks to construct defensive walls, public granaries and town halls, a female brickmaker who could guarantee consistent structural quality could secure massive long-term civic procurement contracts. Surviving town ledgers show that these women confidently signed legally binding agreements with city magistrates, calculated complex volume discounts, and arranged the complex transport of heavy cargo by oxen cart or river barge directly to active construction sites. On the artistic side of the industry, women who inherited elite pottery workshops demonstrated an exceptional command of chemistry and luxury market branding. They formulated secret glazing recipes using tin and copper oxides to create brilliant, glass-like surfaces that imitated expensive porcelain imported from the East. They negotiated direct distribution terms with wealthy patrician families, customizing ceramic crests and elaborate dinnerware sets for noble weddings and diplomatic gifts, allowing them to charge exorbitant premium rates that elevated their personal prestige and guaranteed absolute financial independence. As the late-night air slowly cools the heavy brick walls of the silent kilns, and the newly fired ceramics rest safely in their dark cooling chambers until the morning light, we can marvel at the profound impact of these industrial women. They did not merely live within the medieval world, they literally provided the material substance that rebuilt its cities and adorned its finest tables. Their financial freedom was securely baked into the very bricks, tiles, and glazes that shaped the physical landscape of their era, leaving behind an unbreakable foundation of wealth and ingenuity that quietly watched over the sleeping earth in peaceful, undisturbed tranquility. As the velvet mantle of the deepest night wraps the world in a profound, unbroken calm, let us travel back to the small firelit islands of the Venetian lagoon and the forested valleys of Bohemia. In the 14th and 15th centuries, the manufacture of fine glass, not just for windows, but for luxurious drinking vessels, mirrors and delicate glass beads, was one of the most closely guarded industrial monopolies in the world. The secrets of fusing sand and ash into crystal clear or vibrantly coloured glass were protected by strict corporate laws. Yet within the high-stakes, secretive world of the glassmaking guilds, archival registries show that independent women and widows operated as highly successful furnace owners, master bead makers, and international exporters of glass commodities. Managing an artisanal glass furnace required a brilliant mastery of thermal logistics, chemical safety, and high-volume capital allocation. Glassmaking was an expensive and dangerous enterprise. A furnace had to be kept burning continuously at precise, intense temperatures for weeks at a time, requiring immense quantities of specialized hardwood fuel. Imagine a female furnace owner standing in the dark warmth of her studio as the midnight fire reflects in the molten glass. Her first major financial challenge was the strategic sourcing of highly specific raw materials. She had to purchase pure quartz pebbles from clean riverbeds, import high-grade soda ash derived from marine plants in the Levant, and calculate the exact costs of metallic additives needed to create proprietary colors, such as gold for deep rubies or manganese for clear crystal. These women managed complex supply budgets, ensuring that their furnaces never ran out of fuel or raw components, which would cause catastrophic structural cooling and immense financial ruin. A particularly lucrative sector dominated by women was the production of contouri, the tiny, intricately coloured glass trade beads that Venice exported by the millions to markets across Africa, Asia, and Northern Europe. These beads functioned almost as an international currency, highly valued in cross-cultural trade networks. Female master beadmakers, or suppialoom, developed specialized torch-blowing and cold-cutting techniques that allowed them to mass-produce uniform, beautiful beads with incredible speed. These female entrepreneurs did not simply sell their products to local retailers. They negotiated bulk distribution contracts directly with transcontinental merchant syndicates. Surviving maritime cargo lists show that boxes of glass beads owned and registered by female workshop masters were loaded onto galleys bound for distant ports. They calculated complex export duties, managed international bills of exchange, and utilized guild courts to aggressively defend their production monopolies against counterfeiters or unauthorized artisans who tried to replicate their signature designs. As the late-night silence finally settles over the cooling ovens of the island workshops, and the finished glass vessels rest securely in their packed straw crates until the morning vessels arrive, we can reflect on the brilliant resilience of these masters of fire and light. They turned the fluid beauty of molten glass into a highly organized, legally fortified global empire. Their financial independence was beautifully preserved in the translucent depths of the luxury wares they distributed across the known world, leaving an enduring legacy of industrial brilliance that quietly watched over the sleeping earth in peaceful, undisturbed tranquility. As the deep velvet night folds its quiet wings over the medieval countryside, let us journey into the fragrant meadows, deep woodlands, and monastery orchards that bordered the ancient towns. In the 14th and 15th centuries, before the global trade in cane sugar and petroleum-based waxes, two natural commodities held an absolute monopoly over daily life: honey and beeswax. Honey was the primary sweetening agent for all culinary and medicinal preparations, while beeswax was an essential strategic resource utilized to craft the clean-burning, smokeless candles required for the continuous services of great cathedrals and the late-night chambers of royal palaces. Within this vital ecological and industrial sector, archival records show that enterprising women operated as major apiary directors, wax-refining entrepreneurs, and wholesale candle merchants. Managing a large-scale beekeeping and wax processing enterprise required an exceptional understanding of seasonal ecology, strict quality purification, and sharp market distribution. This was not a small, casual backyard hobby. It was a highly organized industry that supplied the literal light and sweetness of the medieval urban world. Imagine a female apiary mistress or wax merchant standing in her quiet workshop as the midnight moon illuminates her inventory. Her first major financial challenge was the systematic collection and purification of raw materials. She managed extensive networks of rural foresters and tenants who maintained hundreds of beehives, calculating the purchase costs of raw honeycombs against the expected yield of pure wax and clear honey. She directed the complex multi-stage boiling and filtering processes needed to separate impurities from the yellow wax, turning it into standardized high-value blocks of raw material that could be stored indefinitely without losing their market value. These female industrial managers possessed a highly sophisticated understanding of institutional contract negotiation. Because the church required massive quantities of pure white beeswax candles for their daily liturgical calendars, and because secular guilds and royal courts consumed vast amounts of lighting to conduct late-night governance, a female wax refiner who could guarantee top-tier quality could secure permanent, high-volume procurement contracts. Surviving town accounts show that these women confidently negotiated long-term delivery terms with cathedral chapters, provided bulk credit to royal household officers, and managed the specialized logistics of transporting delicate wax goods across long distances without damage. Furthermore, on the commercial side of the trade, these women were masters of product differentiation and specialized manufacturing. They developed proprietary methods for bleaching yellow wax under the sun to create pristine white candles, and they infused their products with aromatic oils and spices to create luxury perfumed lighting for elite aristocratic banquets. They fiercely protected their commercial marks and workshop reputations, utilizing town courts to prosecute fraudulent peddlers who mixed cheap tallow or animal fat into pure beeswax candles, ensuring that their family enterprises maintained a profitable, honorable monopoly over the urban luxury market. As the late-night air cools the solidifying blocks of fragrant wax in the dark storerooms, and the millions of bees rest silently in their hives until the morning blossoms open, we can appreciate the essential, luminous infrastructure these women sustained. They turned the quiet labor of the natural world into a powerful, structured commercial engine. Their financial independence was securely molded into the very candles that illuminated the dark corners of medieval society, leaving an enduring legacy of resourcefulness and industrial capability that quietly watched over the sleeping earth in peaceful, undisturbed tranquility. As the deep velvet night draws the world into its most silent and reflective hours, let us lift our eyes toward the charting tables and maritime libraries of the great late medieval port towns. In the late 14th and 15th centuries, Western Europe stood on the dangerous precipice of an oceanic revolution. Navigators were no longer clinging to familiar coastlines, they were venturing out into the vast open mysteries of the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. The most critical high-value assets of this early age of discovery were not weapons or armour, but information, highly accurate, hand-drawn navigational maps, known as portolan charts. Within this elite, highly secretive knowledge economy, archival discoveries reveal that independent women operated as master cartographers, map studio owners and strategic information brokers to kings and explorers. Directing a professional cartography studio required an extraordinary combination of geographic literacy, mathematical calculation, and rigorous capital management. A portolan chart was a high-stakes luxury commodity and a state secret. A single accurate map could guide a multi-million coin trading fleet safely to its destination, while a flawed chart could lead an entire armada to a watery grave. Imagine a female cartographer working in the absolute quiet of her midnight studio in Genoa, Majorca, or Lisbon. Before her is a massive, pristine hide of fine animal parchment. By the soft glow of her candle, she is using a brass divider to ink complex, intersecting lines of constant bearing, the rum lines that allowed sailors to navigate by compass. Many of these women were born into famous dynasties of map makers and mathematicians, receiving highly private, specialized training. When they took over the leadership of these elite studios, they possessed the unique intellectual capability to decode the raw handwritten logbooks brought to them by returning sea captains, translating chaotic maritime data into beautiful, geographically precise master charts. These female tech entrepreneurs managed highly lucrative commercial portfolios with an absolute focus on security and exclusivity. They did not display their finest works in open marketplaces. Instead, they operated under direct, high-paying commissions from royal chanceries, maritime insurance syndicates, and legendary explorers. They negotiated complex purchase contracts that factored in the immense cost of vibrant, waterproof inks, gold leaf embellishments for royal presentation copies, and the premium intellectual fees for incorporating the newest, most classified geographic discoveries. Furthermore, these women possessed a sharp understanding of information, asset management, and corporate security. They guarded their studio's master templates, the padrons, with absolute vigilance, locking them away in iron-bound chests to prevent rival nations or pirated studios from copying their trade routes. They managed teams of specialized inkers, calligraphers and parchment curers, enforcing strict confidentiality agreements and ensuring that their family businesses maintained a highly profitable, politically vital monopoly over the international navigation market. As the cool late-night air gently stirs the heavy parchment rolls in the dark studio corners, and the vast oceans outside rock the docked ships in a slow, soothing rhythm, we can marvel at the expansive intellectual horizons of these female cartographers. They sat in the quiet shadows of their workshops, yet they drew the very lines that redefined the shape of the known world. Their financial independence was anchored firmly in the mastery of human knowledge and the charting of the unknown, leaving a brilliant, permanent legacy of precision and courage that quietly watched over the sleeping earth in peaceful, undisturbed tranquility. As the velvet silence of the late-night hours deepens into perfect stillness, let our journey transport us into the fragrant, wood-scented workshops of late medieval instrument makers. In the 14th and 15th centuries, the cultural awakening of Europe brought forth a grand renaissance of music. Courts, cathedrals, and wealthy patrician households demanded fine-stringed instruments, such as lutes, harps, viols, and psalteries, to accompany poetry, celebrate religious feasts, and elevate social gatherings. Within this highly specialized, acoustically sophisticated economy, historical guild records reveal that independent women operated as master luthiers, workshop owners, and premium suppliers of musical assets across the continent. Directing a master instrument-making workshop was an endeavor that required an extraordinary blend of structural engineering, auditory physics, and rigorous asset management. A fine medieval lute or viol was not a simple piece of furniture. It was a high-margin luxury commodity whose value depended entirely on the precision of its dimensions and the quality of its resonance. Imagine a female luthier standing in her quiet workshop as the midnight air cools the workspace. Around her are hanging fine templates of wood, specialized chisels, and jars of natural amber varnish. Her first major financial and logistical challenge was the highly selective sourcing of raw materials. She had to purchase rare, seasoned resonance woods such as alpine spruce grown in cold, slow-growing northern forests, or highly figured maple, calculating the exact premium costs of timber that had been dried for over a decade to ensure it would not warp under the intense tension of musical strings. A particularly secretive and lucrative branch of this industry, dominated by specialized female guilds, was the manufacture of high-end musical strings made from animal intestines. Producing strings that were perfectly uniform, flexible, and capable of holding accurate pitches under varying climates was an early biochemical art. Female string makers managed complex chemical treatment vats, refined preservation techniques, and controlled the wholesale distribution of these essential musical accessories to royal ensembles and cathedral choirs throughout Europe. These female workshop masters were highly capable participants in the competitive institutional bidding arenas. When a major cathedral chapter expanded its choir or a royal court updated its musical chapel, they would issue luxury commissions for entire consorts of uniform instruments. Surviving accounts show that independent women submitted detailed technical specifications, won these prestigious contracts over male competitors, and managed the specialized logistics of transporting these delicate wooden creations across mountain passes and river routes without exposing them to damaging humidity. Furthermore, these women possessed a sharp understanding of brand reputation and intellectual asset protection. They engraved their custom family marks inside the acoustic bodies of their instruments, ensuring that their premium craftsmanship could be recognized by elite buyers across borders. They fiercely protected their proprietary varnishing recipes and internal bracing dimensions from rival workshops, allowing their enterprises to maintain a highly profitable, honorable monopoly over the aristocratic cultural market. As the late night air gently settles over the smooth curves of the unfinished lutes resting on the benches, and the slow ticking of the town clock provides a soft, rhythmic bass line in the darkness, we can appreciate the harmonious legacy of these industrial pioneers. They turned the raw materials of nature into beautiful conduits of human emotion and cultural prestige. Their financial freedom was securely woven into the very strings and seasoned woods that provided the soundtrack to their changing era, leaving an enduring legacy of technical brilliance and entrepreneurial strength that quietly watched over the sleeping earth in peaceful, undisturbed tranquility. As the deep velvet night stretches its quiet canopy over the sleeping towns, let our imagination settle within the highly specialized, delicate world of early optics and lens manufacturing. In the 14th and 15th centuries, an invisible technological revolution was transforming European intellectual life, the invention and widespread adoption of spectacles or besicles. As the expansion of law, banking, and printing demanded hours of intense reading, the ability to correct failing eyesight became a massive economic asset. Within this elite, highly lucrative industry of optical glassmaking and lens grinding, specialized archives reveal that independent women operated as master lens crafters, workshop owners, and wholesale suppliers of precision vision aids to the intellectual elite of Europe. Directing an early optical workshop was an enterprise that required an extraordinary combination of geometric physics, metallurgical mastery, and sharp market calculation. Crafting a functional lens was a high-risk, labor-intensive process, A single microscopic scratch or an inaccurate curvature during the manual grinding phase would render an expensive piece of raw material completely worthless. Imagine a female lens grinder working in the quiet privacy of her candlelit workshop in Florence, Nuremberg, or Venice. Before her is a small disc of pure, high-grade rock crystal or specialized clear glass imported from the furnaces of Murano. By the soft glow of her lamp, she uses a curved iron dish and fine abrasive sands to meticulously smooth the convex surface of the lens. Many of these women inherited these advanced technical workshops from their fathers or husbands within the goldsmith and glassmaking guilds. When they assumed full leadership, they possessed the rare mathematical competence to calculate different focal strengths, customize frames from horn, bone, or leather, and assemble precision spectacles that perfectly met the needs of aging scholars, wealthy merchants, and royal chanceries. These female optical entrepreneurs managed highly prestigious commercial portfolios. A pair of well-crafted spectacles was an extraordinary luxury item, valued by professionals whose entire livelihoods depended on their ability to read microscript on financial ledgers or legal parchment. A female master did not market her wares to general peddlers. Instead, she negotiated direct supply terms with university faculties, international banking houses, and ecclesiastical courts. Surviving business ledgers show that these women managed complex pricing structures that factored in the immense cost of sourcing unblemished raw crystal, the hours of precision manual polishing required, and the structural design fees for crafting comfortable, secure nose frames. They fiercely protected their proprietary grinding templates and polishing compounds from rival workshops, ensuring that their family businesses maintained a sharp, highly profitable edge in the regional technology market. As the late-night air cools the iron grinding dishes on the silent benches, and the town scholars close their heavy books to sleep, we can appreciate the profound impact of these visual pioneers. They did not merely participate in the medieval economy, they literally extended the working lives of the minds that directed it. Their financial independence was beautifully ground into the clear, luminous lenses that brought the world back into focus for thousands of leaders, leaving a brilliant legacy of mathematical precision and entrepreneurial strength that quietly watched over the sleeping earth in peaceful, undisturbed tranquility. As the silent hours of the deep midnight hold the world in perfect, heavy stillness, let us venture into the dark, echoing foundries and metal-casting workshops that stood along the industrial quarters of late medieval cities. In the 14th and 15th centuries, the urban economy depended fundamentally on two things: the absolute accuracy of commercial measurements and the clear, resonant signalling of bells that structured the daily working hours. The melting, alloying and casting of copper, tin and brass was a massive, highly regulated industry. Within this challenging high-temperature domain of heavy metallurgy, detailed municipal guild rolls reveal that independent women and widow proprietors successfully operated as master brass founders, bell casters and official makers of standard legal weights. Directing a medieval brass foundry or bell casting pit was an industrial enterprise that required an exceptional command of structural engineering, precise chemical thermodynamics, and substantial capital reserves. Liquid metal was an unforgiving asset. An improper balance of copper and tin, or a single pocket of moisture in the clay mold, could cause a catastrophic explosion or a structural fracture, destroying months of expensive preparatory labor in a single second. Imagine a female foundry owner standing in the dark warmth of her courtyard as the midnight furnace glows with an intense orange radiance. Before her are massive stone molds buried in pits of earth to withstand the immense pressure of molten bronze. Many of these women were born into elite families of metalworkers, absorbing the secret mathematical ratios required to produce perfect acoustic resonance or highly durable metal alloys. When they assumed full directorship of these foundries, they managed the large-scale purchasing of imported copper ingots, calculated the precise amounts of charcoal needed to sustain the extreme temperatures of the blast, and directed teams of journeymen and furnace stokers through the dangerous, carefully timed pouring processes. These female industrialists held a vital position in the enforcement of civic law and marketplace trust. Every major trade guild and municipal market required certified brass weights and scales to ensure that gold, spices, and fine silks were not falsely measured. A female master who held the city's official stamp of calibration would cast and engrave uniform heavy brass nesting weights, effectively managing the legal standards of regional commerce and charging substantial premium fees for her certified unalterable products. On the monumental side of the industry, surviving church accounts show that independent women successfully negotiated lucrative contracts to cast grand church bells and civic warning bells. They submitted detailed weight estimates, guaranteed the specific tonal quality of the finished bronze instruments, and assumed full financial liability for the dangerous process of raising these multi-ton symbols of civic pride into the high stone towers of cathedrals and town halls. They protected their foundries' custom marks and alloy recipes with absolute professional vigilance, ensuring that their family enterprises maintained a highly profitable, politically respected monopoly over the heavy metallurgical market. As the late-night air slowly cools the massive buried clay moulds and the dark metal solidifies into its permanent, powerful shape, we can marvel at the immense strength and precision of these female industrial leaders. They turned raw earth and liquid fire into the very tools that measured the wealth and chimed the hours of their civilization. Their financial independence was securely cast into the heavy bronze and brass that defined the structural trust of their world, leaving an unbreakable legacy of engineering and economic power that quietly watched over the sleeping earth in peaceful, undisturbed tranquility. As the deep velvet night flows into its most peaceful and silent hours, let us enter the aromatic, secretive laboratories of the medieval ink makers and chemical compilers. In the late 14th and 15th centuries, as the rapid growth of universities, printing houses, and international merchant guilds accelerated across Europe, the world required an endless, monumental supply of a fluid more precious than wine, ink. Without high-quality, durable ink, no banking ledger could stand the test of time, no royal decree could retain its legal weight, and no printed book could reach the hands of scholars. Within this highly specialized, chemically demanding sector of graphic manufacturing, historical guild rolls reveal that independent women operated as master ink makers, pigment chemists, and primary suppliers of specialized writing and printing fluids to the institutional elite. Operating a commercial ink and pigment laboratory required an exceptional understanding of organic chemistry, thermal stabilization, and meticulous supply chain management. Fine ink was not a simple black liquid made from soot and water. It was a sophisticated compound that required a precise chemical balance to ensure it would bind permanently with parchment or paper without burning through the delicate surface. Imagine a female ink master working in the absolute quiet of her midnight laboratory in Paris, Frankfurt, or Venice. Around her are clay vats, heavy iron boiling pots, and shelves lined with raw minerals and imported resins. Her first major financial and logistical challenge was the strategic sourcing of raw chemical components. She had to buy bulk quantities of iron sulfate, gather oak galls collected from ancient forests, and import expensive gum arabic harvested from the acacia trees of North Africa to act as a stabilizing binder. She calculated her operating budgets carefully, ensuring that she could refine these raw materials into consistent high-grade iron gall inks that dried to a rich, velvety black that would not fade for centuries. With the arrival of the printing press, these female chemists adapted instantly to a massive new industrial demand. Printing presses required a completely different type of ink, a thick oil-based compound made from boiled linseed oil and walnut oil, mixed with carbon soot, which could adhere perfectly to metal typefaces without smudging. Female laboratory owners managed the dangerous, volatile process of boiling these oils over open fires for hours, creating a highly profitable monopoly over the essential fluid that fueled the information revolution of the early Renaissance. Furthermore, on the luxury side of the market, these women were masters of color chemistry and branding. They formulated brilliant red cinnabar inks for illuminating royal capital letters, shimmering gold leaf binders, and rare blue pigments made from crushed azurite. They negotiated high-value direct supply contracts with the scriptoriums of elite monasteries, the chanceries of sovereign kings, and the administrative headquarters of merchant cartels. They fiercely guarded their proprietary boiling times and chemical proportions from rival guilds, ensuring that their family enterprises maintained a highly lucrative, honourable monopoly over the literate world. As the late-night silence finally settles over the cooling, boiling pots of the dark laboratories, and the thousands of ink jars rest safely sealed inside deep wooden crates until the morning transport wagons arrive, we can appreciate the vital, quiet infrastructure these female chemists sustained. They did not merely witness the transformation of human thought, they manufactured the very substance that made that transformation permanent and visible. Their financial independence was indelibly written into the rich, dark ink of the volumes that reshaped the human mind, leaving an enduring legacy of scientific mastery and entrepreneurial strength that quietly watched over the sleeping earth in peaceful, undisturbed tranquility. As the deep, silent current of the night continues to hold the world in a state of beautiful, unbroken rest, let us journey into the grand weaving lofts and industrial textile yards that occupied the waterfront districts of late medieval cities. In the 14th and 15th centuries, the expansion of international commerce and the growing desire for domestic luxury created an immense market for specialized heavy textiles. This was an industry of extremes. On one end, it produced the rugged, weatherproof canvas sails and protective tarpaulins that allowed merchant fleets to cross the violent oceans. On the other, it crafted the massive, intricately woven wool and silk tapestries that insulated the cold stone walls of noble castles. Within this vital dual-purpose textile economy, historical guild rolls and notary archives show that independent women operated as powerful workshop owners, master tapestry weavers, and industrial canvas suppliers. Directing a heavy textile or luxury tapestry workshop required an exceptional understanding of raw fibre mechanics, complex geometry, and long-term capital management. Textile production at this scale was an expansive, space-consuming endeavour that required significant upfront investments in raw materials and specialised structural equipment. Imagine a female workshop mistress standing in the quiet of her weaving loft as the midnight wind passes over the roof. Around her stand grand vertical looms and massive rolls of raw fibre. Her first major financial and logistical challenge was the strategic procurement of raw materials. For the maritime market, she had to buy bulk shipments of coarse hemp and flax, calculating the spinning costs against the water-resistant density of the finished weave. For the luxury market, she had to manage the high capital costs of importing fine English wools, dyed Flemish yarns, and shimmering silk threads. Balancing these expenditures against the multi-year timelines required to complete a single set of aristocratic wall hangings. These female industrial managers possessed a highly advanced understanding of contract negotiation and institutional supply dynamics. A female canvas maker who could guarantee the strength of her sailcloth could secure lucrative, high-volume procurement contracts with state-owned shipyards, such as the famous Venetian arsenal or international shipping cartels. Surviving town accounts show that these women confidently signed legally binding agreements, calculated bulk material discounts, and managed the complex transport of heavy fabric bolts directly to the active harbour docks. On the artistic side of the industry, female tapestry masters operated at the highest levels of cultural and commercial prestige. These massive wall hangings were the ultimate symbols of wealth, requiring master weavers to translate complex allegorical paintings into wool and silk threads with mathematical precision. A female studio owner did not sell her creations to random merchants. She negotiated directly with sovereign kings, princely courts, and wealthy archbishops. She managed large, structured teams of female apprentices and journeyman weavers, ensuring strict quality control and defending her proprietary cartoon designs from being copied by rival workshops, allowing her family enterprise to maintain a highly profitable monopoly over the elite luxury market. As the late-night air slowly cools the silent weaving lofts, and the heavy shuttles and rolls of canvas rest securely on their benches until the morning light, we can appreciate the immense structural and artistic power of these textile pioneers. They literally wove the fabrics that sheltered medieval life, protecting wealth on the stormy seas, and bringing warmth and beauty to the stone halls of governance. Their financial independence was securely woven into every thread and heavy knot of their industrial output, leaving an enduring legacy of capability and strength that quietly watched over the sleeping earth in peaceful, undisturbed tranquility. As the silent midnight hour reaches its deepest and most serene stillness, let us wander into the quiet, specialized chemical workshops that occupied the industrial riverbanks of late medieval cities. In the 14th and 15th centuries, the physical structural expansion of Europe relied on a hidden, vital substance that bound the material world together: high-grade industrial glues and architectural adhesives. From the waterproof pitches needed to seal the hulls of ocean-going ships, to the crystalline bone glues required by master luthiers and furniture makers, and the lime-based binders used by stonemasons building cathedral vaults, adhesives were a foundational economic asset. Within this crucial, chemically rigorous industry, archival records reveal that enterprising women operated as primary owners of boiling facilities, adhesive manufactories, and raw resin distribution networks. Directing an industrial glue and sealant enterprise required an exceptional command of organic chemical extraction, thermodynamic stability, and large-scale logistical coordination. The manufacturing of adhesives was a highly specialized process that involved converting raw animal and botanical byproducts into uniform, stable commercial compounds through precisely controlled thermal processing. Imagine a female laboratory master standing in the quiet of her facility as the midnight moon reflects off her cooling vats. Her first major financial challenge was the systematic organization of raw material supply chains. She had to secure large-scale contracts with municipal slaughterhouses for hides and bone scraps, and establish trade agreements with woodland foragers who gathered raw pine resins and tree pitches. She calculated her processing costs against the pure adhesive yield, ensuring that her furnaces maintained a constant, efficient temperature to extract collagen and distill pure resins without burning the delicate chemical bases. These female industrialists possessed a highly advanced understanding of institutional market dynamics and quality standardization. A female glue maker who could produce a completely transparent, moisture-resistant bone glue could charge premium rates to elite cabinet makers and instrument workshops across the continent. Likewise, those who manufactured heavy, waterproof maritime tar and pitch signed lucrative supply contracts with state shipyards and overseas merchant syndicates, who required thousands of barrels of sealant annually to protect their valuable merchant vessels from destructive saltwater rot. Surviving municipal records show that these women successfully managed complex wholesale accounts, extended structured commercial credit to builders' guilds, and aggressively protected their secret boiling formulas and compounding additives from rival producers. They utilized municipal courts to enforce their exclusive supply rights and prosecute fraudulent competitors, ensuring that their family firms maintained a highly profitable, resilient position in the regional construction and trade networks. As the late night air slowly cools the thick, setting resins in the deep storage casks, and the heavy cauldrons rest in the darkness until the morning fires are rekindled, we can appreciate the essential bonding infrastructure these women sustained. They did not merely observe the architectural and maritime triumphs of their era. They provided the literal cohesion that held those triumphs together against the forces of nature. Their financial independence was securely bound into the very structures and vessels that redefined the boundaries of their world, leaving an enduring legacy of chemical ingenuity and entrepreneurial strength that quietly watched over the sleeping earth in peaceful, undisturbed tranquility. As the velvet silence of the late night hours stretches toward the dawn, holding the world in absolute and peaceful suspension, let our minds drift to the specialized artisan quarters located along the swift-flowing rivers of medieval towns. In the 14th and 15th centuries, leather was an indispensable strategic material, serving as the heavy-duty polymer of the pre-industrial world. It was essential for the construction of rugged equestrian harnesses and saddles that powered overland transport, the durable boots worn by armies, and the specialized leather armor plates used for military protection. Within this massive, chemically complex sector of heavy leather processing and harness manufacturing, municipal tax rolls and inheritance deeds reveal that independent women operated as wealthy tannery owners, master leather crafters, and major military suppliers. Directing a medieval leather tanning factory or heavy harness workshop required an exceptional capacity for long-term capital management, chemical patience, and acute commercial foresight. Leather processing was a multi-stage, resource-heavy industry. Raw hides required months, sometimes over a year, of continuous chemical soaking in deep stone vats before they were transformed into water-resistant, unyielding industrial assets. Imagine a female tannery owner standing in her quiet courtyard as the midnight fog rolls in from the river. Her first major financial challenge was the strategic organization of a vast multi-layered supply chain. She had to secure large-scale contracts with regional butchers for raw hides, and buy bulk shipments of crushed oak bark from foresters to extract the rich natural tannins needed to preserve the leather. She calculated her operating budgets over incredibly long cycles, maintaining heavy cash reserves to sustain her workers and pay municipal taxes, while her inventory sat aging in the chemical pits, waiting for the perfect moment of market readiness. These female industrial managers possessed a highly advanced understanding of large-scale contract negotiation and institutional procurement. When a sovereign monarch prepared an army for defense, or an international merchant syndicate expanded its overland transport wagon trains, they issued massive tenders for heavy leather gear. Surviving treasury accounts show that independent women successfully won these corporate commissions, providing thousands of uniform leather straps, shield covers, and heavy-duty team harnesses. They signed legally binding agreements that specified absolute tensile strength standards, managed teams of journeyman couriers, and assumed full financial liability for any defects in delivery. Furthermore, on the luxury side of the market, these women were masters of product differentiation. They operated specialized studios that produced gilded leather wall coverings for elite townhouses and embossed leather cases for precious university manuscripts. They defended their workshop marks and proprietary oil-softening recipes with fierce determination, utilizing guild courts to prosecute unauthorized producers who attempted to sell substandard, rapidly rotting wares in their territories, ensuring that their family businesses maintained an honorable, highly profitable monopoly over the industrial leather market. As the late-night air slowly cools the silent workshops, and the heavy leather hides rest securely on their drying racks until the morning light, we can marvel at the profound economic resilience of these industrial women. They did not merely fit into the fabric of medieval enterprise, they produced the very material that kept its transportation, defense, and commerce moving across continents. Their financial independence was permanently stamped into the durable, unbreakable leather that shaped the infrastructure of their civilization, leaving an enduring legacy of strength and industrial capability that quietly watched over the sleeping earth in peaceful, undisturbed tranquility. As the deep velvet night preserves its peaceful hold over the world, let us journey into the aromatic, steam-settled districts along the urban canals, where another essential branch of the medieval chemical revolution was operating: the industrial production of soap and textile cleansing agents. In the 14th and 15th centuries, the explosive growth of urban populations and the massive expansion of the cloth-weaving industries created an unprecedented demand for specialized detergents. Every bale of raw sheep's wool required rigorous scouring to remove natural greases before spinning, and every finished textile demanded intense cleansing before it could take a vibrant dye. Within this vital, highly profitable soap economy, Historical guild registries reveal that enterprising women operated as primary owners of large-scale soap boiling facilities, fat refining networks, and international soap distribution firms. Directing a medieval soap manufactory or savonnerie was a rigorous, highly technical chemical enterprise that required significant upfront capital and meticulous quality control. Soap making was not a casual domestic chore at this scale. It involved large industrial courtyards containing massive iron cauldrons and deep stone settling vats capable of processing thousands of pounds of material simultaneously. Imagine a female soap master standing in her quiet courtyard as the midnight embers glow softly beneath her largest boiling vats. Her first major financial and logistical challenge was the strategic management of a complex raw material supply chain. She had to secure bulk shipments of high-grade oils, such as fine Mediterranean olive oil for luxury white soaps, or refined animal tallows for heavy industrial cleansing agents. Simultaneously, she had to import vast quantities of beryllia or wood ash to leach out the powerful alkaline lye required for the chemical process of saponification. These women calculated their raw ingredient formulas with absolute precision, balancing the ratio of fat to alkali to ensure the finished soap would harden into durable blocks without crumbling or becoming too harsh for delicate fabrics. A particularly lucrative sector dominated by these female entrepreneurs was the supply of liquid scouring soaps to the powerful weavers and dyers' guilds. A female soap maker who could guarantee a consistent, non-staining batch of industrial soap could secure exclusive high-volume procurement contracts with regional textile cartels, ensuring a steady and predictable flow of revenue into her family firm. On the luxury side of the industry, these women were masters of product branding and market differentiation. They crafted hard-scented soap bars infused with lavender, rosewater, and crushed botanicals, imitating the famous luxury soaps of Castile and Venice. They negotiated direct wholesale terms with royal households and noble courts, packing their premium products into custom wooden chests stamped with their workshop's proprietary merchant marks. They utilized town courts to aggressively protect their production monopolies from unauthorized peddlers who tried to flood the market with cheap, foul-smelling animal fat substitutes, ensuring that their enterprises maintained a reputation for absolute purity and chemical excellence. As the late-night air slowly cools the hardening blocks of fragrant soap in the silent drying rooms, and the great stirring paddles rest in the darkness until the morning fire is rekindled, we can appreciate the vital, comforting infrastructure these women sustained. They did not merely live within the medieval urban world, they manufactured the very cleanliness and industrial efficiency that allowed its cities and textile economies to flourish. Their financial independence was securely molded into the solid blocks and fluid cleansers of a transformative industry, leaving a brilliant legacy of chemical capability and entrepreneurial strength that quietly watched over the sleeping earth in peaceful, undisturbed tranquility. As the deep, silent current of the night carries us toward the quiet hour before the dawn, let our minds wander away from the busy harbour docks to the steep, majestic stone quarries and high scaffolding of the medieval world. The 14th and 15th centuries represented a golden age of monumental architecture in Europe. Cities competed fiercely to construct the tallest cathedral spires, the most fortified stone walls, and the most magnificent civic palaces. This physical expansion relied entirely on an unyielding, high-investment material, structural stone. Within this heavy, hazardous sector of quarry management, architectural stone cutting, and raw material supply, historical notary archives and church construction ledgers reveal that resourceful women operated as primary quarry owners, transport contractors, and elite suppliers to the master masons of Europe's greatest monuments. Directing a stone quarry or architectural masonry supply firm in the late Middle Ages was an industrial enterprise that required an extraordinary capacity for long-term logistics, structural engineering knowledge, and massive upfront capital allocation. Stone was an unforgiving asset. Extracting multi-ton blocks of marble, limestone or sandstone from the earth and moving them across mountainous terrain required immense human and mechanical power. Imagine a female quarry owner standing on her mountain estate as the midnight moonlight illuminates the carved stone faces of the hillsides. Her first major financial and logistical challenge was the strategic coordination of extraction and labor. She managed large crews of specialized quarrymen, toolsmiths, and teamsters, calculating the heavy daily costs of feeding and paying her workforce against the future delivery of raw materials. She directed the dangerous process of splitting stone along natural fault lines, ensuring that her workshop produced uniform, structurally sound blocks that would not fracture under the immense weight of cathedral vaults. These female industrial managers possessed a highly advanced understanding of institutional bidding and public contract negotiation. When a cathedral chapter or a sovereign prince initialized a major building campaign, they issued extensive procurement tenders for stone. Surviving construction accounts, such as those from the building of the great cathedrals in Paris, Florence, and Cologne, show that independent women and widow proprietors successfully submitted competitive bids, winning exclusive rights to supply raw materials. They signed legally binding agreements that specified exact stone dimensions, negotiated premium rates for weather-resistant qualities, and managed the complex multi-tiered transport logistics of moving heavy stone blocks by oxen carts to nearby rivers, where they were loaded onto specialized barges bound for the urban building sites. Furthermore, on the artisanal side of the industry, women who inherited elite stone carving and sculpture studios demonstrated a sharp command of architectural branding and artistic quality control. They managed teams of journeyman carvers who produced repetitive structural components such as window tracery, gargoyles and decorative column capitals, ensuring that every piece converted from raw stone perfectly matched the master architect's geometric blueprints. They fiercely protected their proprietary stone marks and quarry rights, utilizing municipal and royal courts to defend their boundaries against unauthorized miners or fraudulent suppliers, ensuring that their family enterprises maintained a highly profitable, politically respected monopoly over the building landscape. As the late-night air cools the dusty stone benches of the silent mountain quarries, and the great cranes and iron chisels rest in the darkness until the morning sun strikes the cathedral walls, we can marvel at the profound structural impact of these female industrial leaders. They did not merely live within the medieval world, they literally provided the material foundations and physical weight that allowed its faith and civic pride to reach the sky. Their financial independence was permanently carved into the enduring stones of the castles and cathedrals that outlasted centuries, leaving an unbreakable legacy of engineering and entrepreneurial strength that quietly watched over the sleeping earth in peaceful, undisturbed tranquility. As the deep velvet night draws the world into its most silent and meditative hours, let us travel into the specialized chemical distilleries and resin pressing yards that occupied the outer industrial rims of late medieval cities. In the 14th and 15th centuries, as urban landscapes became filled with complex machinery from the massive wooden gears of tidal mills and windmills to the delicate iron clockwork of public towers and the heavy iron axletrees of overland transport wagons, the world faced a silent physical challenge: friction. Without high-grade lubricants, protective oils, and distilled spirits like turpentine, the physical engines of medieval commerce and defense would rapidly grind to a halt, destroyed by heat and rust. Within this highly technical, chemically rigorous sector of lubricant manufacture and fluid distillation, historical guild registries and notary contracts reveal that independent women operated as master distillers, workshop owners, and primary suppliers of industrial oils to the corporate elite. Managing an industrial oil refining and resin distillation facility required an exceptional understanding of organic chemistry, thermal control, and meticulous raw material logistics. Crafting effective lubricants and anti-corrosive sealants was a dangerous, volatile process. Distilling flammable pine resins or rendering heavy animal fats over open furnace fires required constant expert surveillance to prevent catastrophic explosions. Imagine a female distillery mistress standing in her quiet workshop as the midnight stars reflect in her copper cooling coils. Around her are heavy iron kettles, stone pressing blocks, and rows of tightly sealed clay jars. Her first major financial and logistical challenge was the strategic sourcing of raw materials. She had to purchase bulk quantities of crude pine tar gathered by foresters, secure regular shipments of high-grade lard and tallow from municipal butcheries, and negotiate for imported vegetable oils such as rapeseed or linseed oil. She calculated her processing budgets carefully, balancing the high cost of charcoal fuel against the expected yield of refined, clear oils and pure turpentine spirits that could protect wood and metal from the destructive moisture of northern European climates. These female tech entrepreneurs possessed a highly sophisticated understanding of industrial market dynamics and targeted distribution. A female master who could produce a completely fluid, non-gumming oil for delicate mechanisms could command exceptional premium rates from the elite horology and instrument-making guilds who required perfect lubrication for town hall clocks and maritime compasses. Likewise, those who manufactured heavy-duty axle grease signed massive procurement contracts with overland shipping cartels and royal artillery officers who needed thousands of gallons of lubricant annually to keep their heavy wagon fleets moving smoothly over rough trade routes. Surviving business registries show that these women successfully managed complex wholesale operations, extended credit to master millers, and fiercely protected their secret distilling timelines and compounding ratios from rival producers. They utilized town courts to aggressively defend their processing monopolies and prosecute fraudulent competitors who mixed cheap, watery fats into industrial lubricants, ensuring that their family enterprises maintained a reputation for absolute reliability and technical excellence across borders. As the late-night air slowly cools the copper stills in the silent workshops, and the heavy gears of the city's great mills rest quietly in the dark waters until the morning breeze begins to blow, we can appreciate the essential, invisible infrastructure these female chemists sustained. They did not merely witness. Sleepy History with Kevin is created for relaxation, entertainment, and sleep purposes. The stories shared on this channel are inspired by historical events, daily life, and real periods in history, but they may be simplified, adapted, or narrated in a calming way to enhance the listening experience. This content is not intended to be a precise academic or educational source. While we aim to stay generally accurate, some details may be altered for storytelling flow and relaxation. Please do not rely on this channel as a primary source for historical research or study. By listening, you acknowledge that this content is designed to help you unwind, relax, and fall asleep. Thank you for your understanding and support.